Hey guys, tonight we're rewinding all the way back to 1888, a year when the sky itself seemed to turn against humanity, specifically the Great Blizzard of 1888. Picture this: you're living in a drafty wooden house, coal is your only heating option, and weather forecasts are about as reliable as that one friend who might swing by later. The snow? It starts falling casually one Sunday night in March, and then just doesn't stop, for days. You might think you've seen a snowstorm before, but trust me, this is the kind of weather that laughs in the face of scarves and mittens. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Are you already tucked in, or just getting settled? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in Lower Manhattan to a strange stillness outside. That's already suspicious. In a city known for its clatter, carriages, horses, factory whistles, quiet means trouble. You lift the curtain and see a flat wall of white. No horizon, no buildings. Just snow, blowing sideways like someone's shaking a flour sack directly at your window. The night before had been cold, sure, but nothing new for March. Still, this snow has weight to it. You can hear it piling up, and when you push the front door open, it doesn't budge. Not because it's locked, but because it's been barricaded by drifts that rise chest high. Outside, the wind slaps like a whip, tearing through layers of wool and sending powder straight down your collar. This is the beginning of what newspapers will later call the Great White Hurricane. Now imagine this isn't just a passing storm. You're about to be sealed in with your family, maybe a dozen people total, for nearly a week. And this isn't cozy fireplace and hot cocoa vibes. We're talking, we might run out of coal by Tuesday energy. People don't have central heating. Most families sleep in 1 or 2 rooms. Blankets are precious, dry socks are basically currency, and privacy, forget it. One historical fact here: the storm dumped over 50 inches of snow in parts of the northeast, with wind gusts reaching 80 miles per hour. It created snowdrifts that climbed up to second-story windows and buried trains on their tracks. Communication lines were downed. Entire cities went dark. By the time the skies cleared, more than 400 people across the region had died, and no one was going anywhere for days. But here's a quirkier bit. In Brooklyn, some families started using their sleds indoors, pulling toddlers across the floor just to get them from one icy room to another. I mean, why not? When your hallway feels like the North Pole, you make it fun or you go crazy. As the hours drag on, night falls, and your world shrinks to the glow of a single oil lamp. There's no electricity. The fire in the stove is crackling, but it's fighting a losing battle against the cold. Every time someone opens the door to check on neighbours, a ghost of wind shrieks inside, making the walls tremble. Sleep becomes a group activity, not by choice, but by survival. You pile into one bed with your siblings, cousins, maybe even the neighbours who got trapped while visiting. There's no my pillow or your side. There's just bodies pressed together like mismatched puzzle pieces, quilt after quilt stacked on top like insulation, and someone's icy toes inevitably poking your leg. You might complain, but deep down you know that shared body heat could be the reason you wake up at all. Now here's where things get debated. Some scholars argue that families in rural areas were better equipped to handle the storm, since they were used to stockpiling food and sleeping communally. Others suggest that urban tenements, despite being overcrowded, were less insulated and more dangerous once the coal ran out. There's still a lot of disagreement about who had it worse, but either way, sleep wasn't restful, it was strategic. You try to fall asleep with your coat still on, gloves tucked under your hat, and boots lined up under the bed so they don't freeze stiff. The walls groan from the wind pressure, and every so often a thud shakes the roof, probably snow sliding off, or worse, a chimney cap giving way. You listen to your father's slow breathing, the baby sniffling in the corner, and the rhythmic tapping of sleet against the window. It sounds like tiny fingers trying to get in. Your mother wakes up to check the fire every hour, feeding it scraps of newspaper and whatever wood she can find. Some families burn furniture by the second night. You're lucky, for now. But you still sleep in a half-dream state, always aware, always cold, always bracing for the sudden crack of something giving way outside. And as the wind continues its endless howl, you drift, not into deep, restful sleep, but into that strange twilight zone where your body powers down just enough to survive. You dream of warm sun on your skin, of grass between your toes, of the day this blizzard becomes just a story. The funny thing about massive natural disasters, most people don't believe they're coming until it's too late. You'd think a swirling wall of snow the size of a small continent would have sent up a few warning flares. But in 1888 the art of weather prediction was, let's say, more vibes than science. There were no satellites, no Doppler radar, and the US Weather Bureau, which had only been around for about 18 years, operated more like a well-meaning uncle with a barometer and some seaweed. So when newspapers printed something vague like cold spell expected, no one in their right mind stocked up on 7 days' worth of firewood or salted pork. You might even remember your neighbour scoffing that morning. "Just a dusting," he'd said, stepping out in a hat so thin it could pass for a pancake. You all laughed. The sky looked weird, sure, but it always did in March. You figured maybe it'd snow a little, maybe the kids would get a break from school. What you didn't expect was the sky to close in like a lid on a pot and just start pouring cold fury. Historical fact break. On March 11th, 1888, the temperature plummeted overnight across the northeast. Rain turned to sleet, then to heavy snow as Arctic air swept in fast and hard. Wind gusts reached hurricane force. In just a few hours, the storm went from maybe stay inside to you will not survive if you leave this building. And people still tried, because no one thought it could get that bad. In New York City, workers still headed to the docks, kids still trudged to school, and milkmen made their rounds. By midday, the city was a different planet. Horses froze mid-stride. Entire trains disappeared beneath snowdrifts. People who had left home that morning never came back, caught in the whiteout and buried within blocks of safety. You're lucky, though. You stayed home. Not because you were wise, but because your youngest had a fever and your wife begged you not to go to work. That fever? Kind of a miracle now. You're inside, sure, but that doesn't mean you're safe. You're watching your windows disappear under a thick frosting of snow, your front door bowing inward like it's under siege, and your chimney puffing like a dying dragon. But the truly eerie part? There's no warning siren, no emergency broadcast. Just silence outside, broken only by the occasional crash of something surrendering to the weight above. Inside, the house is full. Too full. Your in-laws are stranded with you after a Sunday lunch gone long. The kids are too bundled to cry, just blinking, wrapped in scarves and buried under quilts. And as the snow piles higher, that early skepticism, the belief that this would pass, starts to sour into a kind of creeping dread. No one knows how long this will last. No one knows how much worse it will get. And there is a very real fear you might run out of food, fuel, or space to breathe. Here's your quirky fact for the night. Some city dwellers, realizing they were stuck indoors for the long haul, started chipping snow off the inside walls of their houses to melt for water. It sounds like a cartoon survival tactic, but when your pipes are frozen and the roof's dripping ice onto your dinner table, you get creative fast. There are even accounts of people cooking soup using melted snow, gathered from their bedroom windowsills. As night settles in and the lamps flicker, it becomes clear this isn't going to be a one-night ordeal. You move furniture. You plug every gap you can find with towels, scarves, newspaper, anything to keep the bitter wind from invading further. Someone suggests hanging rugs on the walls to insulate the room. You do it. Not because you think it'll help, but because doing something is better than just sitting. The scholarly debate here is a spicy one. Some historians argue that the government and press failed the public with underreporting and vague warnings. Others suggest it wouldn't have mattered. Even with clear warnings, the technology and infrastructure of the time couldn't have supported a large-scale storm prep effort. There were no snowplows, no mass transit alerts. The very concept of prepping just didn't exist for the average family in 1888. What does exist now, though, is the bone-deep awareness that you're not in control. The storm isn't just outside, it's in your home. Cold seeps through the floorboards like a living thing. The temperature indoors dips low enough to see your breath. The children huddle in corners where quilts have been layered to make soft, strange nests. No one knows what time it is anymore. The clocks have all stopped. The night stretches forever. Sleep doesn't come easily. You lie there, eyes open, tracing shadows on the ceiling. Somewhere in the house, a shutter bangs loose. Every sound feels like a threat. The snow presses in, not loud, but relentless. A muffled weight that swallows the outside world and presses the silence so close you can almost feel it touch your skin. Even your dreams are cold. Odd little fever loops of warmth you can't reach. You finally doze off, still wearing your coat and boots. Someone else in the bed turns over and mumbles something unintelligible. You don't answer. You're not even sure if it was English. The storm keeps hissing through the cracks, and you try to imagine it stopping. You try to imagine the sun returning. But for now, all you have is the darkness, the weight of the blizzard above, and the uneasy sense that no one, anywhere, was really ready for this. By the second night, your house no longer feels like a home. It's more like a temporary shelter slapped together out of wood, wool, and whatever dignity people had left. There's no longer such a thing as personal space. The front room, once reserved for visitors and stiff parlour conversations, has been completely overtaken by sleeping bodies, tangled quilts, and the scent of wet wool and coal smoke. Someone's always coughing, someone's always snoring, and every floorboard creaks with the weight of too many people pressed into too small a space. You've got 12 under your roof. That includes your 5 children, 2 in-laws, your cousin Alfred, who just happened to visit before the snow hit, and his wife, who is very pregnant and absolutely not happy about anything. You're down to 1 stove for warmth, and even that's starting to struggle. The back rooms have been abandoned entirely. They're too cold, like stepping into an icebox. Even the walls feel brittle. Your breath hangs in front of you as you talk, and no one's talking loud anymore. Every conversation is a quiet murmur, just above a whisper. It's like speaking too loudly might crack the fragile barrier holding the storm at bay. You pull mattresses off beds and drag them into the main room. Quilts are spread on the floor like tapestries, and you're constantly shuffling them to keep everyone covered. The youngest kids get sandwiched in the middle, between adults, in what's become a squishy human lasagna of heat retention. You sleep shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip, barely able to roll over without disturbing 3 other people. It's uncomfortable, sure, but it's survival. The human body is a decent furnace when pressed into service. Historical fact for you: many households in 1888 were multi-generational and already used to sharing rooms and even beds. It wasn't uncommon for several siblings to sleep in the same bed, especially in working-class families. But the blizzard forced even wealthier households into a kind of enforced intimacy, cramming together in whichever room was warmest and could support a fire. Bedrooms stopped being private retreats. They became communal lifeboats. What no one tells you about this kind of closeness, though, is how weird it gets. People talk in their sleep. Someone cries in the middle of the night, not from pain or fear, just raw exhaustion. You learn what everyone smells like at hour 36 of not bathing. Someone passes gas and you all pretend not to notice, because laughing takes energy. There's always a baby squirming. There's always someone with ice-cold feet trying to sneak them against your leg. And yet, weirdly, it becomes normal. Here's a fringe fact to tuck under your pillow. There were families who swore that sleeping this way, all tangled together during the storm, changed them forever. Some even continued the habit after the blizzard passed. Not every night, but on cold evenings, or when someone had a fever or bad dreams. It was a bonding ritual that grew out of necessity, like a weird form of storm-forged intimacy that never quite left them. Now there's debate among historians over whether the forced proximity of these sleeping arrangements increased tension or fostered connection. Some memoirs recall screaming matches and frayed nerves. Others paint these nights as strangely beautiful, candlelight glowing on worn wallpaper, whispered stories passed around like shared candy, a sense of unity that nothing else could have summoned. And both are probably true, depending on the family, the moment, and how long the coal held out. You feel your back locking up from sleeping half-curled against the stove. Your oldest son keeps getting up to check the windows, convinced he saw something moving outside. You tell him it's just shadows, just the storm playing tricks. But you're not entirely sure. The wind makes shapes out of snow, twists it into ghostly figures that could be people or animals, or just your brain reaching for meaning in the endless white. And then there's the problem of the windows themselves. Frost creeps over them like a living thing. The glass pulses with cold. You stuff rags into the sills and hang an extra blanket over the largest one, but still, cold seeps in like a polite guest who just won't leave. You start to wonder if it's colder inside than out. You wouldn't dare check. Someone breaks a chair for firewood. You let them. It's the ugliest one in the house anyway. A week ago you might have winced, but now you just nod. You're past sentimentality. Warmth is king. and everything else is flammable. The air inside grows thick, coal smoke, human breath, and the slow tang of desperation. No one can wash. No one wants to remove even a single layer of clothing, so everyone's becoming steadily more ripe. Still, you'd rather smell your cousin Alfred's socks for another day than brave the icy hallway to use the chamber pot. That thing's basically a frozen bucket of regret at this point. The floor becomes a landscape of limbs. You navigate it like a maze, stepping between sleeping forms in the dark when you get up to add more coal to the stove. You glance down and see your youngest curled in a ball, her mittened hand tucked beneath her cheek. She's dreaming. You can tell by the way her eyes flicker under her lids. You hope it's something warm, maybe summer, maybe the beach, somewhere far from here. Eventually you lie back down and press your face into someone else's shoulder. You don't even ask who it is. It doesn't matter. Your eyes close. The room breathes in and out around you, a quiet, tired rhythm of survival. Outside, the wind wails and the snow continues to fall, thick as silence. Inside, you're still here, still together, still hoping this night will end. By the third night, the real enemy isn't the cold. It's the slow, creeping weight of fatigue. You've lost track of the days. No one's really sleeping anymore. They're collapsing. There's a difference. It's not rest. It's shut down. The kind your body forces when it's too tired to be scared, too cold to shiver, and too hungry to bother complaining. You lie down, eyes still open, and your mind drifts off without your permission. Just poof. Gone. Then you wake hours later, unsure how long you were out or who's even still in the room with you. Time becomes slippery. Moments blend together into a sort of frozen purgatory. What makes it worse is that the heat, the precious life-saving heat, is disappearing faster than anyone planned for. Your coal pile is now just a black smudge at the bottom of the scuttle. You're burning furniture like it's firewood, even the things you swore you'd never touch. Aunt Ruth's rocking chair? Gone. That shelf with the picture of your wedding day? Ash now. There's no ceremony to it. Just another log on the fire. Everyone watches it burn without speaking. Heating the whole house? Not a chance. At this point, the family's retreated into a single room, the warmest, most central one. You hang quilts in doorways to trap the heat. Towels get stuffed under every crack, every sill, every whispering breeze that dares sneak in. Still, the air inside is thin and bitter, the kind that stings your nostrils when you inhale too deeply. It's a step above outside, but not by much. Historical fact. Coal stoves were the standard heating source in most urban homes by 1888, but they required constant feeding and ventilation. During the blizzard, many chimneys clogged with snow or collapsed under weight, turning homes into traps. Families had to make tough choices, smother the fire and freeze, or risk smoke and suffocation. Some didn't choose fast enough. In your house, the chimney still works, for now, but smoke backs up occasionally, turning the room into a haze of sharp grey. You will blink and cough and pretend it's fine, but you're breathing soot and hoping it's not your last breath. You open the stove door and see the coals glowing like angry embers, the only source of light some nights when the lamp oil runs low. To keep warm, people pile on every piece of clothing they own. You're wearing 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, a scarf wrapped tight around your neck, and mittens with holes at the fingertips. Your wife's still wearing her Sunday boots, indoors, in bed. No one undresses, not even a little. Taking off your coat feels like an act of insanity. The moment your skin meets the air, it screams. And yet, in the middle of all this freezing chaos, there are these weird little moments of ridiculous humanity. Your son tries to warm his socks by the stove and sets the edge of one on fire. He hops around like a one-footed penguin until someone tackles him with a coat. Everyone laughs, half crazed, then falls back into silence. The laughter is thin and echoing, like it's bouncing off the walls of a cave. Here's your quirky fact for this section. To stretch the warmth, some families played a kind of bedtime lottery. They'd rotate sleeping spots, giving different people the coveted centre of the bed each night, the warmest part. It wasn't about fairness, really. It was about survival math. Kids got centre priority. Old folks, too. If you were young and healthy, you got the edge. And the edge meant frost on your boots and maybe waking up with a nose like a popsicle. Historians debate just how effective these heating strategies were. Some argue that most homes, even poorly insulated ones, retained enough heat with proper ceiling and coal usage to survive. Others point out that insulation in 1888 was a joke, more aesthetic than functional. Houses leaked warmth like sieves. Many families, especially in poorer neighbourhoods, froze slowly in their own beds. The truth probably falls somewhere in between. Good planning made a difference, but luck played a bigger part. And yet you're here, and you're still warm. Barely. You're sitting on the floor near the stove, your legs tucked under a quilt, watching the flame dance behind the iron grate like it's a tiny theatre show. Someone's humming a song under their breath. Something old, something familiar. You think it's your mother-in-law? You didn't even know she still sang. The sound fills the room like soup fills a belly. Not enough to satisfy, but just enough to feel human again. Sleep, when it finally comes, is strange and fractured. Your brain plays weird tricks on you. You dream about warmth so vividly that you wake up sweating. But it's not sweat. It's condensation from your breath, frozen and then melted again on your collar. Your pillow is damp. Your hair sticks to your forehead. You blink and realise your face is inches from the stove. You must have rolled closer in your sleep, desperate for heat. Too close, honestly. You shuffle back without waking anyone, hoping the burn mark on your scarf isn't from an ember. That night one of the children wets the bed. Everyone pretends it didn't happen. You don't even scold her. She's shivering and ashamed, and you just wrap her in another blanket, one that's not soaked, and press her between two warmer bodies. By morning, the wet spot is frozen into a crusted patch of ice and linen. You'll deal with it later, and still, the storm doesn't stop. Outside, the snow continues to fall, not soft and gentle, but in angry sheets, thick enough to erase the world. The windows are now solid white. You can't see out, and no one can see in. The world has been erased by winter, and all that exists now is this room, this stove, and the people around you breathing in ragged, frost-bitten unison. Another night down. How many to go? By the fourth night, the storm has settled into a rhythm. An awful, endless rhythm that scrapes along the walls like a dull blade. You'd almost call it predictable if it weren't still trying to kill you. The howling wind comes in pulses like waves, as if the storm itself is breathing. 1 minute it's distant and ghostly. The next it screams against the house with such violence you think the roof might lift off like the top of a toy box. But the worst part isn't the sound itself. It's that you've gotten used to it. That primal, blood-chilling roar has become the new normal. You fall asleep to it, you eat to it. It's the backdrop of every waking thought. That sound burrows deep. You hear it in your chest, in your teeth, vibrating through the floorboards and into your bones. The house creaks constantly now, a kind of uneasy groaning that makes you nervous to lean on the walls too hard. A few shingles came off last night, thudding like a dropped anvil just above the sleeping kids' heads. Everyone jumped, even the baby, though thankfully she didn't cry. That would have meant burning more lamp oil just to calm her down. So you all just sat in the dark and listened to the wind scream its lungs out, hoping the next thud wouldn't be something bigger. Let's talk about those nighttime sounds for a moment. In the daylight you can kind of ignore the background noise, but at night, when the lamp is out and your eyes are wide open in the dark, you hear everything. The rattling window panes, the way the wind finds cracks in the wall and whistles through them like it's trying to play a sad little tune, the stove popping as it cools, the sharp clatter of ice shifting on the roof. And beneath it all, the soft sounds of the people around you, breathing, sniffling, tossing in their sleep. Historical fact, wind speeds during the 1888 blizzard reached 80 miles per hour in some places. That's hurricane force. And when you combine those speeds with 50 inches of snow, you don't just get weather, you get isolation. Snowdrifts buried homes, covered doors, and climbed halfway up second-story windows. Some houses were sealed in so completely that families couldn't even get word to neighbours that they were alive. Or not. And here's the creepy fringe bit. Some survivors later swore they could hear things moving around outside during the storm. Not just the wind or the snow shifting, but actual footsteps. Heavy ones, sluggish and circling. Could have been an animal. Could have been nothing. Or maybe someone out there didn't make it home in time. The snow doesn't care if you collapse 5 feet from shelter. It buries everything the same. Inside your home, the sound of the blizzard has taken on a personality. Sometimes you swear it's calling your name. Not in a cartoonish haunted house kind of way. Just soft, low, like the moan of an old floorboard that somehow sounds familiar. You shake your head and tell yourself it's just the cold making your ears ring, but you aren't the only one hearing things. Alfred said he dreamed he heard his mother's voice outside the window, even though she died the year before. Your wife doesn't even respond when he mentions it, just tightens the quilt around the baby and stares at the stove. Now, scholars debate the psychological effects of long-term exposure to extreme cold and noise. Some compare it to sensory deprivation. The combination of relentless sound and confined space can blur the line between dreaming and waking. Others argue it's not the noise, it's the helplessness. When you're trapped for days without control, your mind just starts to fill in the gaps. Maybe that's true. Maybe you're all just a few days from cracking, or maybe the storm wants witnesses. You try not to think too hard about it. Instead, you focus on small sounds, the crackle of fire, the soft snore of your youngest, the sleepy murmur of your wife asking if it's morning yet. These are the sounds you hold on to, the ones that keep you grounded. Tonight the snow has worked its way into the attic. You hear it crumbling through cracks in the beams, dropping in soft puffs behind the walls. It's like the house is inhaling snow. Earlier you climbed up there, just for a minute, to check the weight on the roof. The rafters were groaning like old men in pain. You threw down some extra blankets, as if cotton and flannel might hold back a few £1,000 of frozen water. It's a joke, but you do it anyway. You do anything that feels like doing something. Here's something unexpected. The baby sleeps through all of it, every night. No fussing, no squirming, just a little human furnace tucked against her mother's side, warm and pink-cheeked. It's like she knows everyone else is handling the fear part, so she's off the hook. You watch her sometimes, just to remember what peace looks like. Meanwhile, the older kids are starting to show cracks. They've stopped playing. No more games of pretend it's a ship or guess what shape I'm drawing on the blanket. Their eyes are dull and their energy is low. It's not just the cold, it's the constant stress. The adults try to tell stories to lighten the mood, but even those are running dry. You've heard the one about Grandpa fighting off a fox with a shovel 5 times now. You start to wonder if it was even a fox. Eventually someone breaks into a quiet rendition of a hymn, Abide With Me, and a few voices join in, hesitant but grateful for something to do. The sound is soft, wobbly, and a little off-key, but it's human. And in this frozen tomb of a house, human is good. You close your eyes and let the sounds swirl around you. Wind, hymn, breathing, and the low belly growl of the storm itself. You press your forehead against someone's back. It might be your son's, it might be Alfred's. It really doesn't matter. And let yourself drift into whatever kind of sleep this is now. Maybe it's survival. Maybe it's surrender. Either way, the blizzard howls on. By now, it's not even a question. Everyone sleeps fully dressed. There's no debate. No one is peeling off layers to feel a little more comfortable. No one is stripping down for bed like in those fancy paintings with lace-trimmed nightgowns and slippers by the hearth. No, in your house, bedtime looks like a herd of bundled-up scarecrows collapsing wherever there's space. Jackets stay on. Boots stay on. Gloves, scarves, hats on. At most, a few brave souls risk loosening a top button if the fire's feeling generous that night. Otherwise, everything stays put. You don't undress in a blizzard. That's a good way to wake up dead. Even the children don't complain anymore. On the first night, your middle boy whined about sleeping in his coat. He was itchy, claimed he couldn't breathe. Now he doesn't say a word. He just curls up, sleeves bunched up over his hands, and passes out like a little soldier in a snow-covered trench. It's wild how fast kids adapt. Survival doesn't leave room for drama. Comfort has become a luxury, the kind you wave at from a distance and hope to see again someday. Boots are the real stars of this sad bedtime fashion show. Everyone's sleeping in them, or at least keeping them pressed under blankets near their legs so they don't freeze solid. Once that leather gets stiff, you can't bend it, can't tie it, can't even walk properly. You remember what happened to your neighbour, George, a few years back when he tried to dry his boots too close to the stove. They shriveled up like jerky and cracked like glass. He had to wrap his feet in rags for a week. You're not about to let that happen here. Your boots are staying on your feet, thank you very much. And honestly, the effort it would take to get undressed at this point isn't worth the trade-off. Every layer you remove is one more minute spent exposed to the cold. One more chance for the warmth you've hoarded all day to escape. Even getting ready for bed is more like preparation for battle. You wrap your scarf tighter. You check the stove. You rub your hands briskly, pulling the mittens back on afterward. You tuck in your knees and wedge yourself between two other bodies. That's your bedtime routine now, equal parts strategy and desperation. Historical fact. During the 19th century, it was standard for people to sleep in shifts when space was limited. But during the Great Blizzard, that practice became extreme. Many families abandoned even the notion of night clothes entirely, choosing to sleep in workwear and winter coats. In some cases, neighbours who were stranded together formed sleeping rotations, so that every few hours, someone could trade places and warm up their spot in the bed or near the stove. The fringe fact for this one. In a few homes, people got weirdly creative. One family in New Jersey reportedly made coat sandwiches, literally layering coats on the floor and sleeping between them like human burritos. It sounds ridiculous, but hey, when the mercury's plummeting and your breath's fogging up the inside of your collar, you'll sleep inside anything. Still, there's debate around just how effective sleeping fully dressed really is. Some historians argue that too many layers can actually trap moisture and make you colder, especially if you've been sweating during the day. Others point out that during an emergency, any insulation is better than none, and the risks of removing clothes far outweighed the hypothetical benefits of shedding them to stay dry. But here's the truth you know deep in your frozen core. Comfort doesn't matter. Dryness doesn't matter. Only warmth does. There's a unique feeling you get, lying still in clothes you've worn for 4 days straight. It's a kind of itchy, grimy numbness. You can feel the crust of sweat on your shirt collar, the way your socks cling to your feet like seaweed, the places where your waistband has practically branded your skin. But you can't bring yourself to care. The cold numbs everything, including your disgust. Hygiene is a word from another life. You think back to your old routine, when you'd come home, peel off your boots, maybe change into a fresh shirt, wash your face, light a lamp, and read for a while. That life feels like a fantasy now, a story you once told yourself about what normal looked like. Now, all you do is pile on whatever's thickest and least wet, curl up in a ball, and hope the stove doesn't go out before morning. And morning doesn't feel like morning anymore. It's just the time when it gets a little brighter and slightly less terrifying. You wake up stiff, like your joints have frozen into their sockets. Your fingers ache from curling into fists all night. Your neck creaks when you move. And if you happen to roll over in your sleep and expose any skin to the air, well, that's the part that stings most when you sit up. The worst part? You start to get used to it. Your body adapts in the most disconcerting ways. The stiffness becomes background noise. The smell of damp wool and cooked potatoes becomes the air you breathe. You stop noticing your clothes, even though you haven't changed them in 4 days. Your skin gets red and raw in some places, while other parts go numb and stay that way for hours. And your face, your poor face, has developed what you think might be frost rash, especially across your cheeks where your scarf rides down in the night. You look around the room and realise everyone else is going through the same thing. No one's comfortable, no one's slept deeply. Your cousin Alfred has bags under his eyes so dark they look painted on. Your wife keeps rubbing her knees like they're full of sand. The baby, bless her, still sleeps soundly, bundled in more wool than a sheepdog. But the rest of you look like survivors, and that's exactly what you are now. The storm hasn't let up. It's still howling outside like it's got a personal grudge against your roof. But the inside of the house has grown quieter, more still. Everyone's conserving energy, moving slower, talking less. You all know the drill by now. Keep the fire going, stay bundled, sleep fully dressed, repeat, 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 until the sky finally remembers how to be kind. By the 5th night, your standards have dropped so low they've tunneled under the cellar and are still digging. Sleep is no longer about comfort or even sanity. It's just about location, space. Any spot that's vaguely horizontal, mostly dry, and not next to someone who snores like a dying bear. And so, somewhere between the baby's wailing and the fire's last gasp of warmth, someone suggests something bold, a little weird, but undeniably practical. What if we stuck the kids under the bed? You all pause. You exchange glances over steaming mugs of watered-down broth, and then slow nods. Because yeah, that kind of makes sense. It's warmer down there. There's no draft. The bed frame acts like a windbreaker, especially with quilts draped around it like a sad little fortress. And the kids are small, flexible, they'll fit. And so the great underbed migration begins. You crawl around, sweeping out dust bunnies and stray socks, making room. A layer of quilts goes down first. anything soft enough to cushion those rickety old floorboards. Then, one by one, the younger children crawl under. You tuck them in like sardines in a fuzzy can, layer them in old coats, wool caps pulled low. They giggle at first. Of course they do. It's new, it's different, it's vaguely fun. A secret hideout in the middle of the storm. You can't tell if it's endearing or mildly concerning, but honestly they're warm and quiet for the first time all day, so you call it a win. Historical fact. Makeshift sleeping arrangements were common during the blizzard of 1888. Families improvised however they could. Children slept under tables, behind stoves, inside cabinets, anywhere heat-pooled or cold couldn't reach. Some families even rigged up hammocks or strung blankets like tents to conserve warmth in smaller pockets of space. You've always thought under the bed was the creepiest place in the house, a zone of dust, monsters and the occasional lost sock. But now it's prime real estate. You half joke that you'll rotate kids like crops, give them a few hours under there, then switch with someone from the outer circle. But honestly, they're sleeping better than anyone. They're still giggling in little whispers, whispering nonsense stories to each other, pretending the bed above them is a ship or a castle. The kind of imagination that hasn't been completely snowed under yet. Your cousin Alfred eyes the spot under the other bed, clearly calculating if his grown body could somehow squeeze into that sweet, quilt-insulated shadow realm. You shut that idea down fast. Let the kids have it, you mutter. He shrugs, probably already dreaming of a future where full-grown men can hibernate in kitchen drawers to survive winter. Here's your quirky fact for the night. In some rural homes during the storm, people actually built temporary heat dens inside their own bedrooms. They'd nail blankets to the ceiling, tuck them around the bed frame, and create miniature tents within the house. It was like camping, if camping involved fewer marshmallows and more existential dread. But it worked. Those little heat pockets often kept families alive. There's scholarly debate about whether these tactics were passed down folk knowledge or just sheer desperation dressed up as ingenuity. Some historians argue that families knew from generations of cold winters how to make a house heat efficient. Others say that the Great Blizzard pushed people into brand new creative extremes. But let's be real, when the thermometer disappears under a mountain of snow, you don't care who thought of it first. You just want to not die. By now, every room has transformed into something else. The parlour is a firewood triage zone. The kitchen doubles as a soup station and makeshift drying rack. The bedrooms look like the site of a blanket explosion, with bodies hidden under lumps of wool like forgotten laundry. The underbed zone becomes your unofficial children's wing, a quiet nook where the little ones stay out of the way and, mercifully, out of trouble. At one point during the night, you wake to a muffled thump and a giggle from under the bed. A little hand reaches out from the quilted curtain and taps your foot. It's your youngest son, grinning up at you like this is all a game. You ruffle his hair even though your fingers are stiff with cold. "Back to sleep, bud," you whisper. He nods, pulls his tiny arm back inside the blanket fort and disappears. And for a moment in this cold, collapsed house wrapped in wind and snow, you smile. Then of course the wind returns louder than before. It groans like it's peeling off layers of the roof, shaking the very bones of the house. Snowflakes hiss through tiny gaps in the wall, swirling around your ankles like white ghosts. The fire's almost out again, and you know it's your turn to stoke it. You sit up, joints crackling like ice cubes in hot water, and shuffle toward the stove, blanket wrapped around your shoulders like a knight's cape. You throw in the last of the kindling, squinting as the flames flare up. They dance, sputter, then settle. Warmth returns inch by inch. It never lasts long, but it's enough to push back the edge of the cold, enough to give the kids under the bed another hour of peaceful, silly dreams. And when you crawl back to your spot, pressing yourself between two half-asleep adults who barely register your return, you realise something strange. This is your new normal, sleeping fully dressed, sharing every square inch of floor and blanket, turning furniture into firewood and beds into bunkers. It's not ideal, it's not even comfortable, but it works, at least for now. By the 6th night, the house has begun to feel less like a shelter and more like a leaky boat in the middle of a frozen ocean. Every creak feels like a warning. Every groan of the rafters sounds like a countdown. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for the moment you wake up and realise there is snow inside the house. Not just a sprinkle, not just frost. Actual snow. Pale, powdery flakes drifting lazily in the air like confetti dropped by a very confused partygoer. At first you think you're dreaming. or hallucinating. Wouldn't be the first time this week. Your sleep schedule is basically a shattered window at this point. But then you blink, rub your eyes with mittened hands, blink again, and nope, still there. Snowflakes floating down over your blanket, sticking to your jacket, melting on your nose. Someone gasps. Someone else mutters a shaky, "Oh, come on!" the way only a person who's reached maximum emotional capacity can. You sit up, your joints popping like damp kindling, and follow the flakes upward. The ceiling beams are sweating ice. A thin white crust snakes along them like frost tattoos. And right in the corner, above the wardrobe, a hairline crack has widened into a tiny but merciless gap, just big enough to let the storm inside. You rush to the wall, but your breath catches when you touch it. The wood is freezing. Not cold, freezing. Like touching a block of ice with a thin coat of paint, and you realise, with a twist of dread in your gut, that the snow built up on the roof must be massive. Hundreds of pounds, maybe thousands. The house isn't built for this kind of pressure. No house is. Historical fact. During the Great Blizzard of 1888, many roofs collapsed under the sheer weight of accumulated snow. Some houses were crushed in the night. Others sagged so low that ceilings cracked or caved inward. Families woke to snow pouring through the rafters, turning bedrooms into makeshift igloos. In some cases, people had to shovel from the inside just to keep the structure from giving way. The moment you think of this, you scramble for anything. Buckets, towels, blankets, to stuff into the gap. But the snow keeps coming. Soft, harmless-looking, deadly little flakes. Your wife is already at your side, her breath fast and visible, her fingers fumbling over the blankets you're pushing up against the crack. Someone hands you a pan. Someone else brings over a broom. You all patch and shove and brace like you're plugging a hole in the hull of a sinking ship. But even once the gap is momentarily sealed, the cold in the room isn't the same. It's deeper now, sharper. A kind of cold that doesn't just chill your skin. It moves through it, into your muscles, your bones, the spaces between your ribs. You feel it settle in your joints like old grief. The kids under the bed start whispering nervously. They can feel the temperature shift too. They've pulled the quilts tight over their faces, little eyes glinting in the dark like frightened animals. You reassure them softly. Just a little snow, nothing to worry about. But the words feel thin, like thread trying to hold up a door. Here's your quirky fringe fact. There are reports, unverified but persistent, that some families during the blizzard actually created indoor snow piles for insulation. They would intentionally allow a controlled amount of snow into parts of the house to block drafts, believing packed snow kept the wind out better than wood. It sounds absurd now, but in certain emergency situations, snow can actually act as a crude insulator. Still, historians argue about whether these stories are real survival tactics or just folklore born from the chaos. You're not about to test that theory. The little snowfall you're dealing with now is already too much. As the night deepens, the cold grows even stronger. You can see frost crawling across the inside of the windows like tiny crystal spiders. When you breathe, the air near your face turns into little clouds. Even the stove seems to be losing the fight, the flames flickering reluctantly like they're tired too. There's a scholarly debate about whether families psychologically adapted to these extreme indoor temperatures or simply endured them through sheer necessity. Some experts claim humans in the 19th century had a higher tolerance for cold due to daily exposure. Others argue that everyone was just as miserable then as they would be now, they just didn't have a choice. Based on how your toes feel right now, like tiny frozen carrots, you'd cast your vote for the misery theory. At one point, the wind gusts so violently that the whole house trembles. Snow shakes loose from the rafters and dusts the floor in a sparkling sheet. You glance upward, half expecting the entire ceiling to drop onto your lap. It doesn't, but the message is clear. The storm has no intention of letting up. Everyone rearranges themselves into tighter clusters, instinctively forming clumps of warmth like stranded penguins. You end up lying next to your cousin Alfred again, though neither of you acknowledges it. Pride froze to death 2 days ago. You can feel the heat from his body through 3 layers of fabric, and you silently thank him for existing. Across the room, your wife wraps the baby so tightly she looks like a wool burrito, only her little red nose poking out. The snow keeps drifting down from the ceiling in tiny taunting flurries. You swear one of the flakes lands on your eyelash and stays there, refusing to melt. You blink it off and pull your scarf higher. Later, Hours later, though it could just as easily be minutes, you drift into one of those half-dreams, half-delirious trances where thoughts feel like fog. You imagine the entire house transforming into one giant snow cave, everyone sleeping under mounds of white fluff, drifting in and out of dreams about fireplace warmth and summer fields. It's not a bad fantasy, honestly. If you weren't busy freezing, you might even enjoy the aesthetics. But then reality returns with a shiver. The snow inside the house isn't charming, it's a warning. And as you lie there, listening to the wind threaten to peel away the roof, watching shadows dance across the walls, feeling tiny flakes melt into your collar, you understand fully, completely, that the blizzard isn't just outside anymore. It's in your home, in your bed, in your breath. Still, somehow you sleep, because exhaustion is stronger than fear. By now, sleep isn't just a necessity, it's a negotiation. You don't get to lie down and drift off like in the days before the storm. No, sleep in the middle of a blizzard. This cruel requires scheduling, cooperation, and a touch of cold-blooded strategy. You've officially entered what you now refer to, half-jokingly, as sleeping shifts, and no one gets to opt out. It started the night Alfred snored so loudly that your wife nearly smothered him with a sock. Not maliciously, just a desperate attempt to preserve what little silence she had left. That incident triggered a house-wide conversation, Red whispered argument through chattering teeth, about how you can't possibly all sleep in the same room, all at once, every night, without completely losing it. It was too loud, too crowded, too sweaty. Yes, somehow, even in sub-zero temperatures, you're all still capable of sweating, and it makes things that much worse. So you come up with a system. 2 groups. One sleeps while the other stays up to tend the fire, watch for new leaks, and, let's be honest, try to stretch the food just a little longer by claiming they're not hungry yet. It's a rough rotation, but it works. Kind of. You get a few solid hours, then swap. No one gets enough rest, but at least there's order now, a plan, a rhythm to your misery. Historical fact. During the Great Blizzard of 1888, rotating sleep shifts became a makeshift survival method for many families, especially in homes with limited heating. Someone always needed to tend the fire or rotate bodies near the stove. In larger households, older children or elders often volunteered for the late-night watch, giving others a chance to rest in what passed for warmth. The way you manage it in your house is borderline comical. You even assign prime real estate sleep spots, next to the stove or near the thickest wall quilt, to whoever just pulled fire duty the hour before. People grumble, but there's a certain unspoken agreement. Warmth equals status, and status comes through sacrifice. If you've been up watching the fire, listening to the wind claw at the walls like some starving beast, you've earned your few hours curled up in the stove's golden glow. Of course, this leads to its own set of problems. Your younger son refuses to sleep unless he's next to his sister. Your wife absolutely will not lie next to Alfred anymore after the incident, which no one will speak of, but everyone remembers. And then there's the baby, who is apparently exempt from all scheduling and shifts and simply sleeps when she wants, where she wants. And if you even look like you're thinking about moving her, prepare for a shriek that could shatter icicles. Quirky fact for tonight's mental fireplace. Some families kept a fire watcher's bell, an old handbell or pot lid someone would bang if the fire started dying, or if smoke filled the room from a clogged chimney. It wasn't elegant, but when you've got 6 people drifting in and out of sleep in a room with questionable air quality, a little noise can mean the difference between warm and very, very dead. There's a bit of academic debate about whether rotating sleep schedules actually worked, or if they just gave people the illusion of control. Some argue that sleep deprivation only made things worse, that families who tried too hard to manage the chaos with order ended up breaking faster. Others suggest that maintaining any kind of system, even a messy one, helped protect morale. Maybe both are true. Maybe you can hold it together just long enough if everyone believes there's still a schedule to follow, even if it's built on the backs of frayed nerves and burned furniture. Back in your house, the fire watcher tonight is your oldest daughter. She insisted on taking a shift, said she could handle it. You worried, sure, but then again, she's the only one whose hands are still nimble enough to feed kindling into the stove without dropping half of it. She sits by the fire now, wrapped in 3 coats, and the old horse blanket from the barn, eyes wide in the dim orange light. Her shadow flickers across the wall like something out of a dream. Every so often she pokes the coals with a bit of broken chair leg and hums something. Soft. Maybe a lullaby she half remembers from before the storm. You, meanwhile, are in the back corner of the room, crammed between the wall and the wardrobe, doing your best impression of someone who still remembers what REM sleep feels like. The wall is cold enough to make your ear ache, but you stay there anyway. It's your turn. You earned this spot. Someone even found a pillow. Well, half a pillow. And you're not about to give it up. You drift in and out. Dream of green fields. Dream of a sunlit porch and a pie cooling on a windowsill. It's a movie playing in your head. Warm colours and easy smiles. And then the cold wakes you again. Just enough to remind you where you are. You shift under your blanket, tug your coat tighter and settle back into half sleep. The hours stretch. Somewhere in the room, someone coughs. Somewhere else, someone mutters in their sleep. You hear your daughter get up and gently add another log to the fire. The sound of wood meeting flame-like applause in a quiet theatre. You smile. She's good at this. Eventually your shift comes up. You rise, stiff as a tombstone, and take her place by the fire. She shuffles to the corner, pulls the blanket over her head, and is asleep in seconds. You sit alone now, just you, the fire, and the ever-humming sound of snow against the walls. You poke at the coals and watch the sparks rise like fireflies in slow motion. This is what keeping a family alive looks like. Sleep in shifts, fire duty, blanket diplomacy, 1,000 tiny choices made over and over, hour by hour, until the storm decides to move on. And you hope, maybe tomorrow, it finally will. It's sometime past midnight, though time is basically a suggestion now, and you're on fire duty, sitting cross-legged in front of the stove like a worshipper at a tired, flickering altar. The coals are barely holding on, glowing like the last embers of a dying star. You're feeding them scrap by scrap. Bits of an old cabinet door, some chair legs, even the broken handle from the mop. Everything burns if you believe hard enough, and right now belief is the only fuel you've got left. The room is a patchwork of sleeping bodies, bundled in makeshift cocoons of coats, shawls and threadbare quilts. Every so often someone shifts or lets out a sigh, but mostly it's quiet. Calm, in that brittle, breakable way. You'd call it peaceful if the air wasn't so cold your eyebrows feel frozen into position, but it's better than screaming or coughing, or the thud of snow falling through the roof. So yeah, peace, relatively speaking. Then your stomach growls, loud enough to echo, and for a split second you're embarrassed like someone might hear, but no one stirs. Hunger's nothing new. You're all running on hope and potatoes. There's a single onion left hidden in the kitchen cupboard like a treasure map's final clue. Someone mentioned saving it for soup, if it comes to that. You're not sure what that is, but it sounds close. And it's while you're lost in these food-starved thoughts, staring into the fire like it owes you answers, that you get a terrible idea. A dangerous, foolish, maybe just desperate enough to work kind of idea. What if you use the oven for warmth? Not just for cooking, for heating, for sleeping. That little iron monster in the kitchen still has potential, and it's sitting there, unused, while everyone's teeth chatter themselves to death. You're not the first person to think it. Historical fact. During the Great Blizzard of 1888, people all over the northeast resorted to sleeping near, or even inside their kitchen ovens. Gas ovens weren't common yet. These were wood or coal burning, which meant the risk of carbon monoxide wasn't as immediate but still very real. Families left oven doors wide open and gathered close, wrapping themselves in blankets to trap the heat. Some even put children inside the ovens after extinguishing the fire, using the space like a crude, cosy sleeping nook. Morbid, yes, but when death is knocking on your windows, you answer with whatever you've got. So now, here you are, sneaking into the kitchen like some kind of cold-weather criminal, examining your wood-burning stove-oven combo like it's suddenly evolved into a high-tech survival tool. The stove's still warm from earlier, the last of the firewood went into dinner, such as it was. But if you stoke it just a little, you might get a few good hours of heat. Enough to warm the room, maybe warm a few bodies. You hesitate. There's that nagging little voice in the back of your head, the one that sounds suspiciously like your mother, saying, "People die doing stupid things like this." And yeah, technically true, but people also die from freezing in their sleep, and that's the more immediate concern. You head back to the front room, wrap 2 quilts around your shoulders like you're about to give a TED talk on questionable life choices, and gently wake your wife. "Hey," you whisper, "crazy idea. Don't be mad." 10 minutes later, you've got the kitchen cleared out and a fire slowly reviving in the oven's belly. Not a full flame, just coals. The good kind. Hot but not smoky. You prop the oven door open and place 2 pots of water nearby, just in case you need to make steam or snuff something quickly. Then you lay a thick quilt on the kitchen floor right in front of it and gently transfer your 2 youngest kids there. They're barely awake, limbs floppy and cheeks flushed with sleep. They snuggle in instinctively, drawn to the heat like sleepy moths. You sit beside them, back against the cabinet, watching the shadows flicker on the ceiling. And for the first time in what feels like a year, your fingers stop aching. Your breath doesn't fog. Your body starts to relax in ways you forgot it could. Quirky fact break. There's at least one recorded case of a family turning their entire kitchen into a temporary sleeping chamber, roasting room style. They closed off every door, lit the oven with a low fire, and piled into the space like campers in a tent. They made it through the storm reportedly more comfortable than most. One newspaper later described it as the warmest room in Queens. Still, there's debate about the safety of such stunts. Even back then, people knew it wasn't ideal. Too much heat could spark a fire. Too little ventilation, and smoke might settle over the sleepers like a shroud. There were families who never woke up, but for many the oven was the last best hope, one final weapon against a winter that seemed hell-bent on winning. You stay in the kitchen for hours, eyes half-lidded, warmth soaking into your coat. You don't even notice your wife sliding in beside you, her feet cold against your leg. She doesn't say anything, just rests her head on your shoulder and watches the fire, and no one speaks. You all just listen, to the soft hiss of heat, to the occasional pop of wood, to the blizzard still raging outside like it hasn't even noticed your tiny rebellion. You've built a pocket of warmth in the belly of a frozen beast. For now, it's enough. Eventually you trade spots. Your wife takes the floor with the kids, and you shuffle back to the front room. The air there hits like a slap, cold and sharp and arrogant. But you climb into your blanket pile, still flushed with residual heat, and it makes the difference. You fall asleep faster than you thought possible. You dream of bread, real bread, fresh from the oven, golden brown, the kind you break open with your hands, the kind that steams in the middle, the kind that smells like home. When you wake, there's snow on your coat and your fingers have gone stiff again, but the kitchen was warm, and tonight that was everything. It's sometime around what you assume is dawn, but who knows anymore? The light filtering through the snow-blind windows has gone from pitch black to something like bruised milk, a soft grey, thick and lifeless. You can't tell whether it's a sunrise or just the storm playing tricks again. Either way, it's the start of another day, which only means one thing. Someone has to go outside. Not for fun, not for some brave romantic adventure into the wilderness. No, this is a panic run. A desperate, no-choice, half-crazy mission, because you're almost out of everything. Food, firewood, clean water, patience, pick one. But today's run isn't about any of those. Today, it's for medicine. The baby's coughing now. Real coughing. Wet. Heavy. That low rattle that doesn't belong in a child's chest. Your wife says it's probably just the cold, but her eyes are saying something else entirely. And you know. This isn't just cabin fever. She's sick. So now it's your turn to be the one who braves it. You bundle up like a soldier going to war. 3 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of pants, every shirt you own layered on top of each other. Then the coat, the good one, the one with the heavy buttons and wool lining. And finally your boots, stiff from nights of frost but still holding together. Barely. You wrap a scarf around your face so tightly you can't breathe properly, but breathing is secondary now. You find an extra pair of gloves, not matching. One's your cousin Alfred's, the other's from the lost and found bin at the church. Doesn't matter. You're not dressing for fashion. You're dressing for survival. Your wife helps you tie off your scarf, pulling it over your nose with hands that shake just a little. Come back, she says, and she means it. Not as a cliché, but as a genuine plea, because people don't always come back. Historical fact. During the Great Blizzard of 1888, hundreds of people died just feet from their homes. They became disoriented in the whiteout conditions, collapsed from exhaustion, or froze standing up, leaning against buildings they couldn't even recognise in the storm. Entire blocks vanished under snowdrifts. Men went out for medicine, or food, or even just to check on neighbours, and were found days later buried under 10 feet of snow. You step outside and the wind hits like it's been waiting for you. It doesn't howl, it slaps. You stumble, immediately disoriented, the cold slicing through your layers like they're made of lace. It's not snowing anymore. Not exactly. It's more like the sky is just exhaling ice. The wind kicks it up in waves, blinding you, freezing your eyelashes together. Your boots crunch into snow so deep and packed it feels like walking through dried cement. The street is gone. Just gone. In its place are towering ridges of snow, higher than your shoulders. You realise in a quiet, detached sort of way that you're technically walking on the first story of houses. The street, the sidewalks, they're buried beneath you. Someone's wagon wheel pokes out of a snowdrift like a skeleton's hand. You follow landmarks you can't see. You count steps, 20 to the corner, 15 to the next lamppost, if the lamppost still exists. The world is a white maze now, every wall made of snow, every opening a question. You're aiming for the corner store, the apothecary. You hope they have syrup, cough medicine, something, anything. You don't even have money in your pocket. Just a crumpled note that reads, "Baby sick, help." If the pharmacist's alive, that'll be enough. You're counting on the kindness of a man who may or may not still be breathing. Here's a weird fringe fact. During the blizzard, some stores and pharmacies in the city did stay open, not officially, but because the shopkeepers lived above them and could slide open a hatch or clear a small path to let people crawl in. Transactions were made through broken windows. Some gave away supplies for free, others traded for food, candles, even socks. You stumble twice on the way there, once into a drift so deep you nearly vanish, once into a fence you forgot existed. Both times the wind fills your ears with the sound of 1,000 screams. It's just air, you know that. But it feels alive, angry and ready to bury you like it has so many others. Scholars still debate how many people died trying to help someone else during the storm. The official death toll hovered around 400, but many of those were people who left warm houses to deliver supplies, check on elderly relatives or find medicine for a child. Historians argue about whether that kind of sacrifice is noble or foolish, but standing out here, half frozen and barely able to see your own hands, you don't care. You just know you have to do it. You finally reach the shop, or at least you think it's the shop. You recognise the shutter design, the sign barely visible under a wall of snow. You claw at it with your gloves, banging your fist until your knuckles ache. Then, movement, a flicker of light. A hand pulls open a tiny hatch and an old man's face peers through, red-nosed and startled. You hold up the note. You don't speak. You can't speak. Your lips are frozen shut. The man disappears. A minute later, he returns and pushes a small brown bottle into your hand, cough syrup. Real cough syrup, like a magic potion in a storybook. He says something you can't hear, then slams the hatch shut. And now you run. Not fast, not gracefully, your legs are barely functioning. But you move. You crash through snow like a wounded animal, holding that bottle to your chest like it's the most precious thing you've ever owned. You slip, fall, curse behind your scarf, then keep going. Your scarf is soaked. Your gloves are useless. But your body's moving. Your house is close. You count steps again. 20, 15, 10. You make it. Your wife pulls you inside like she's reeling in a fish, slams the door, locks it. You collapse. No one speaks. Not at first. Then someone claps. A slow, quiet, stunned little clap. Alfred, of course. But the baby gets the syrup. She drinks it in slow gulps, tiny bubbles on her lips. And that night, when you finally sleep, it's the dreamless sleep of someone who faced the storm, stared it in the eye, and made it home. You're not a hero, but tonight, you're still alive. It's been nearly a week since the blizzard started, though no one can say for sure. Days and nights blur together like fog on a cracked window pane. You measure time now by the rhythm of survival. Who's awake? Who's sleeping? Who's tending the fire? Who's coughing? But something new begins to ripple through the neighbourhood. Soft, slow, like a rumour whispered through snow-thick walls. Not everyone is staying at home anymore. Not everyone can. Churches are opening their doors. Schools too. Places you'd never think of as sleeping quarters. Now lit by oil lamps, echoing with footsteps, filled with bundled-up strangers lying shoulder to shoulder on cold wood floors. It begins with families whose houses are no longer habitable, roofs collapsed, stoves buried, walls too thin to keep out the wind. Then it spreads to those who simply can't stand one more night pressed against a stove in a room that smells like desperation and sweat. Your neighbour stops by, A ghost of a man wrapped in 5 layers of wool and determination. He tells you the chapel at the end of the street is open. They've got heat, he whispers, like it's some kind of miracle. You look at your wife, she looks at the baby, then she just nods. You get the kids ready. It's like organising a field trip to the moon. You wrap each child in coats and quilts, tucking scarves around their faces until only blinking eyes peek through. The baby stays against your chest, swaddled so thoroughly she looks like a woolen dumpling. You open the door, and again that same unforgiving wind rushes in, stings your cheeks, claws at your neck. But it's not as bad now. Either the storm is finally tapering off, or you've become too numb to notice the difference. You move in a slow, silent parade through snow that still rises above your knees. Every step is a choreographed stumble. You don't speak. Speaking wastes warmth. Just movement, breath, prayer. When you reach the chapel, the doors are already cracked open, warm air slipping out in trembling little wisps. The sight is enough to make you cry. Inside, it smells of wax, wood, and humanity. The pews have been shoved aside to make room for pallets and blankets. People sleep in quiet piles. Some snore. Others murmur in their dreams. Oil lamps glow on the altar and cast shadows like ghosts across the high ceiling. A priest in thick wool robes walks silently between the sleeping bodies, checking for signs of frostbite, illness, or worse. Historical fact. Across the northeast, churches and schoolhouses became emergency shelters during the Great Blizzard of 1888. Many of them were the only buildings with heat sources large enough to support groups of people. Some churches held dozens of families, while school teachers huddled with their students and community members in single rooms, sharing firewood, soup and blankets. For many, it was the first time sleeping in a public building, surrounded by neighbours they barely knew. You find a spot near the rear wall and lay down the oldest quilt you brought. The floor is hard, yes, but the air is warmer than your home has been in days. The children settle in fast like dropped stones. Your daughter rests her head on your wife's lap, already dozing. You sit down and lean against the cold stone wall, trying not to think too hard about how strange this is, sleeping here, in this sacred space, surrounded by whispers and strangers. And yet, there's something calming about it. You're all in the same boat. Everyone here understands the look in your eyes, the wide, stunned look of someone who hasn't slept properly, who's run out of tears, who's just surviving now. There's comfort in being among the equally broken. Quirky fact for the night. In one New York church, the congregation sang hymns late into the night just to keep warm. Singing helped regulate breathing, kept people awake, and oddly enough, helped boost morale. It wasn't unusual to hear the quiet hum of Amazing Grace or Nearer My God to Thee, echoing through the rafters while wind slammed against the doors. It gave people something to do besides shiver. In your chapel, someone starts a hymn too. Softly, tentatively. Just a woman in the far corner, voice like a cracked teacup. A few others join, then more. You hum along, not sure of the words but knowing the tune. Your wife closes her eyes. The baby stirs but doesn't cry. There's debate among historians about whether these shelters actually saved more lives than they endangered. Crowded conditions meant shared illnesses, exposure to sick children, and too few supplies for too many bodies. Some accounts describe flu spreading through these makeshift sanctuaries like wildfire. Others insist they were the only thing standing between hundreds of families and certain death. The truth, as always, is somewhere in the frozen grey middle. You doze off in short bursts. Not full sleep, just tiny collapses of consciousness. You wake every few minutes when someone stirs or coughs or walks past. A woman near you throws up quietly into a rag. A boy 2 blankets over is having some kind of fevered dream, murmuring names, but the baby sleeps, and the fire keeps burning, and no snow is falling on your face. You notice for the first time a statue of Mary high above the altar, her face serene, arms outstretched. There's something eerie about her in the flickering lamp glow. For a moment, you pretend she's watching over all of you, pretend she can still do something about the cold, pretend she hasn't seen this all before. You shift your weight, stretch your legs, and feel the wooden floor beneath you. A strange, solid comfort after days of shifting in crowded rooms and sagging beds. This isn't your home, these aren't your blankets. But there's heat, there's light, and there's silence. Blessed silence. Wrapped in the echo of sleeping breath, and the fading echo of a hymn. You press your back to the wall, pull the quilt over your knees, and close your eyes. The chapel holds. The wind rages outside, but here, for just one night, you rest in the warmth of strangers. By the 7th day, if anyone told you you'd be sleeping in a barn, you'd probably just nod and say, as long as it has a roof. Standards are officially extinct. Your body's stopped caring about where sleep happens, only that it does. Your joints ache, your skin itches from too many layers worn for too long, and your breath smells like whatever you last ate 3 days ago. Dignity has left the chat. You're now fully in survival mode, and tonight survival smells like hay, manure, and wet animals. Here's how it happened. The chapel grew crowded. Too crowded. More families showed up. Someone's cousin arrived with 6 kids. An old man collapsed in the corner and had to be carried to the teacher's chair near the stove. The air grew damp with coughs and whispers, and your wife started giving you that look. The one that said, it's warmer here, but it's not safer. You needed another option. Someplace with heat. Someplace less human. That's when the neighbour returned. Same man as before. Same wool-wrapped silhouette with snow frozen into the fringe of his scarf. He said he'd cleared out the back end of his barn. Dry straw, he promised, and the cows are still warm. It wasn't poetic, but it made sense. Large animals generate heat. The barn's walls are thick. There's enough straw to bury yourself if needed. You thanked him like he was offering you a palace. So now you're in the barn. You've dragged your kids through waist-deep snow again, only this time with bundles of blankets and whatever food you had left. 2 apples, a cracked tin of salted beans, and what might have once been a heel of bread, now so hard it could be used as a weapon. The cows greeted you like sleepy furnace beasts, their breath steaming in clouds and eyes reflecting lamplight like lazy ghosts. Historical fact: during the Great Blizzard of 1888, many farm families took shelter in their barns alongside livestock. Barns, especially those built with thick timber, retained heat from both animals and hay, and often provided better insulation than old drafty farmhouses. People slept near their cows and horses, using their body heat to stay alive. Chickens nestled under coats, goats curled up with children. It wasn't romantic, it was necessity. And more than one person later credited a cow for saving their life. You and your wife carve out a spot between 2 cows, who seem more annoyed than alarmed. You spread a blanket on the straw, though spread might be generous. It's more like you gently arrange it over the least suspicious pile of hay. The kids immediately lie down, too tired to care that one of the cows lets out a long wheezing grunt that smells like its soul escaped. It's shockingly warm in here, not cosy, not comfortable, but compared to your icebox of a home, this feels like slipping into a hot tub. The smell is pungent, strong, a bold mix of livestock and fermented straw, but you get used to it fast, or your nose gives up. Either way, you settle in. Your quirky fringe fact tonight. In one recorded instance, a child slept so soundly next to a cow during the blizzard that when the cow stood up in the morning, the kid stayed asleep, slumped in a perfect curl against its belly like a sleepy barnacle. The mother apparently wept. Not from fear, but from the sheer relief of seeing her child's face warm and pink for the first time in days. You feel that now. That weird, unexpected gratitude. For animals. For straw. For the kind of humble shelter that doesn't care about your reputation or your Sunday clothes. There's something deeply grounding about sleeping next to a 900-pound creature who just wants to chew hay and survive the night. There's also something weirdly funny about it. You catch your wife smiling, really smiling, as she tucks the blanket tighter around the kids. At least they're quiet, she says, nodding toward the cows. It's true, unlike your cousin Alfred, the cows don't snore. One of them even seems to lean into you a bit, as if to say, welcome to the herd. Of course, there's a darker side to barn sleeping too. One loud stomp, one wrong move near a skittish animal, and you could be dealing with bruises or worse. Scholars debate whether barns were truly safer than homes during the blizzard. Some argue that barns collapse more easily under snow weight. Others say the extra heat and shelter saved hundreds. But the consensus is clear. In desperate times, barns became sanctuaries, makeshift wombs of warmth in a frozen world. Your fire tonight is a kerosene lamp nestled inside a metal pail, just enough to see by, not enough to tempt fate. You pass around a bite of the hard bread and split the apples, saving the beans for breakfast. The kids whisper stories to each other, half dreaming. Your wife sings a lullaby under her breath, one from her own childhood, something about a goose and a river and springtime. You don't remember the words, but the melody pulls you back to a time when sleep didn't come with consequences. Eventually you lie down too, pressing your body into the straw, letting the heat from the cows seep into your spine. You wrap your coat tighter. Your breath fogs in the air for a moment, then fades. The wind outside is still blowing. You can hear it trying to pry at the wooden walls of the barn, but the structure holds. For now. The snow hits the roof like soft fists. Somewhere in the rafters, an owl shifts. You stare up at the dark ceiling beams, tracing lines in the shadows, then let your eyes close. The hay smells like old summers. The cows breathe slow and steady. It's not a bed, it's not even close. But tonight, it's enough. The barn stays warm, but the silence does not. By the 8th night, there's a new kind of quiet, one that doesn't hum with rest, but with something heavier, thicker, the kind of quiet that crawls under your coat and settles in your chest like a lead blanket. It's what happens when people stop asking if the storm is over, when the word when quietly surrenders to the word if. And this morning, if you can call it that, there's a silence that tells you something is wrong before anyone speaks. You wake up with the cow's warm flank still pressed to your hip, hay stuck in your sleeve and mouth as dry as old cotton. Your wife is already sitting up, holding the baby, whose little breaths are shallow and fast. That rattle's still there. The cough medicine helped, but it wasn't a cure. You watch her chest rise and fall like a bird struggling to lift off. Your wife looks at you but doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. You're both thinking the same thing. This storm has already taken too much. You can't let it take her too. And then a sound slices through the stillness, an awful, distant keening. Muffled, yes, but unmistakable. It doesn't belong to the wind. This is something human, something breaking. You both freeze. It's coming from the neighbouring barn just over the fence. The family who took shelter there 2 nights ago. 5 of them, if you remember right. A widow and her sons. The oldest was around your daughter's age. The youngest barely out of diapers. That sound. That's not the sound of someone stubbing a toe or dropping firewood. That's a sound born from the worst kind of knowledge. Historical fact. Deaths from the storm weren't always sudden. Many came quietly in the night. Hypothermia, smoke inhalation, dehydration, illness. But often, it was someone simply not waking up. They'd curl into sleep and slip away, unnoticed until someone reached out to shake them and felt nothing but stillness. Entire families were discovered days later, frozen in postures of sleep, some with soup still in pots, fires still faintly smouldering. That's the brutal poetry of it, how gently the cold can take you when you're too tired to resist. Your wife pulls the baby tighter, her arms tense. The cows shift uncomfortably, picking up on the tension, one lowing softly. The children, half awake, look around, confused by the sudden stillness. But you already know. Someone in that other barn didn't make it through the night. Your cousin Alfred appears in the doorway, eyes dark, circled and serious. He doesn't speak at first, just shakes his head once. Slow. That's all it takes. You feel something inside you quietly sink. You were hoping to get through this without seeing death up close, hoping that your family's suffering might somehow buy immunity from tragedy. But you can't bargain with a storm like this. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't forgive. Here's your fringe fact. Some survivors of the 1888 blizzard claim to have experienced a kind of storm survivor's guilt. They struggled to explain why they lived, while others just yards away did not. Some believed it was divine intervention. Others blamed chance or cunning or dumb luck. But the guilt lingered. Decades later, elderly survivors would still cry recounting the neighbours they'd lost, especially the ones who'd been warm, fed and hopeful right before the end. There's academic debate over how much the storm altered communities in the long term. Some historians argue it brought people closer, forged bonds through shared hardship. Others suggest it created invisible walls, people too haunted to visit old neighbours, families too broken to talk about the ones who didn't come back. And you understand now, maybe for the first time, how both could be true. Later that day, you walk to the edge of the barn. The snow outside crunches under your boots, sharp and brittle. The storm has calmed, but not ended. The sky's a flat silver sheet. No birds, no voices, just wind scraping gently against the frozen world. You see someone from the other barn, the widow. She's standing just inside the door, holding something bundled in blankets. You don't look too closely. You nod. She nods. That's all. What words could possibly do more than that? You return to the barn and lie back down next to your wife and children, pressing close. You kiss the baby's head and pretend you don't hear her cough. The air is still warmer than outside, but it feels colder somehow. Like grief has replaced the heat. Even the cows seem subdued. Their breaths are quieter. They chew more slowly. The lamp flickers. No one speaks. Sleep comes, eventually, but not the kind that rests the body. More like a suspension. A soft, numb detachment. And as you lie there, eyes open, staring at the beams of the barn roof, you realise something strange. This is the first night you haven't hoped for the storm to end. Not because you want it to continue, but because you're no longer sure you know what to do when it stops. You're back in the house now. The barn served its purpose, but it was never meant to be home, not even a makeshift one. After 3 nights of sleeping beside livestock, wrapped in the cloying warmth of hay-damp wool and cow breath, you decided to return. Not because it was safer or warmer, but because it was yours. Familiar walls, even if cracked and freezing, feel better than borrowed space, even one that smells like grass and comfort. Besides, the roof's still holding, for now, and the stove, though coughing like an old man in the final stretch, still breathes heat if you feed it right. The cold inside is worse than you remember. Somehow the place feels smaller now, like the storm has been pressing its weight down on the roof, inch by inch, compressing the space, squeezing the warmth from the walls like juice from a stone. You breathe out and watch your own breath hang there like fog, unmoving. The windows are sealed in white, thick snow pressed against the glass, ice crawling inward like it's trying to claim what little is left. You know now that the weather isn't just outside, it's in here with you, crouched in corners and behind doors, waiting for you to let your guard down. So you go to work, not heroically, not even energetically, just stubbornly. You start stuffing cracks again. You rip up the old rug in the hallway and tack it over the bedroom window. A towel gets shoved under the front door. Your cousin Alfred suggests sacrificing the drapes for insulation, and for once, no one argues. Even your wife doesn't blink when he climbs on a chair with a carving knife to bring them down. Historical fact. During the 1888 blizzard, families invented clever, often desperate ways to insulate their homes. Walls were lined with newspaper or straw. Rugs and coats were nailed over windows. Hay was packed around exterior walls to keep wind from slipping through. One New England family reportedly hung quilts dipped in water that then froze into makeshift ice barriers, blocking wind better than any wooden shutter. It sounds absurd, but when you're negotiating with a storm, logic becomes a little flexible. You do what you can. Every room is transformed into a miniature bunker. You decide to consolidate sleeping quarters again, everyone in the front room near the stove. You build the nest thicker this time. Quilts, mattresses, coats, a fortress of fluff and desperation. And this time, you add a layer of newspapers across the floor under everything else, because someone said it helps. You have no proof, but honestly, why not? At this point, if someone suggested sleeping under a stack of fish to stay warm, you'd consider it. That's tonight's quirky fringe fact. Apparently some families in rural New York and Pennsylvania used actual hay bales, or fish netting layered with newspapers as impromptu wall insulation. There's a story of one man in upstate New York who swore his family stayed warm solely because they slept behind a wall of cabbages that hadn't been moved from the pantry. He claimed they held heat better than any fireplace. Was he right? Debatable. But his family survived, and the cabbages got famous. So now your house is dressed like a scarecrow. There are rugs on walls, towels stapled into door frames. The mirror above the fireplace is fogged with permanent frost. You don't even see your face in it anymore, which might be for the best. You're not sure you'd recognise it. The cold, the hunger, the worry, they've carved new lines into everyone. You sit down, finally, and take stock. You've managed to gather just enough wood for 2 more nights. Food is low, but you've gotten creative. Boiled beans with snow melt, bread scraps soaked in potato water. It's not dinner, it's alchemy. The kind of food that fills just enough space to keep people from collapsing. The baby's cough has eased, but only slightly. The medicine is nearly gone. You stare at the bottle and will it to refill. It doesn't. She sleeps, curled between 2 older siblings, tiny hands in wool socks you repurposed as mittens. Your wife sleeps too, one arm always resting on the baby like a protective spell. But you can't sleep. Not yet. The wind outside has changed. It's softer, but not friendlier. It's moving slower now, which is somehow worse. Like it's thinking, like it's waiting. You walk the perimeter of the room, checking every towel, every blanket nailed to the windows. Everything holds for now. But the cold still creeps in. It's not just a temperature anymore, it's a presence. You feel it in the bones of the house, in the floorboards under your feet, in the air just behind your neck. There's a scholarly debate, of course there is, about how effective these makeshift insulation techniques really were. Some researchers believe the psychological comfort of doing something was more powerful than the physical results. Others argue that simple acts like blocking airflow or layering paper made measurable differences in temperature. But when you're living it, the numbers don't matter. Warmth is personal, subjective, emotional. If a stack of coats on a window gives you the courage to sleep another hour, it's doing its job. You finally lie down, back against the wall, legs curled in toward your chest. You've kept your boots on. Everyone has. Your coat is zipped halfway and tucked under your chin. You press your hands between your thighs and close your eyes. You try not to listen to the wind. You try not to think about the snow shifting above you. You focus instead on the warmth of the room, the tiny island of heat you've built from drapes, rugs, and stubbornness. And as you drift into half sleep, you wonder how long this will stay with you. Will you ever stop checking windows for drafts? Will you ever sleep again without scanning the ceiling first, imagining where the snow might break through? Outside, the storm may be losing momentum, but inside, you're still at war. Still patching, still insulating, still surviving. Sometime in the night, though again, that word barely means anything anymore, you wake up to the sound of someone talking. Not a conversation, just one voice, low and steady, weaving through the silence like it's speaking directly to the shadows. At first you think it's a dream, then you sit up and realise it's your father-in-law. He's sitting near the stove, which has been burning low for hours, his arms wrapped around his knees, rocking ever so slightly. His hat is pulled down over his eyes, but you can see his mouth moving. At first you think he's praying, then you listen closer. He's not praying, he's talking to someone, or rather something. Maybe the fire, maybe the storm, maybe whatever ghosts have made themselves at home in this house over the last week. You hear him mutter, "No, no, not like that. Keep the kettle close. Don't trust the cracks." Then silence. Then another burst. "We lost 3 hens that way. All froze. Little feet in the air like weeds," he chuckles. But it's the kind that sours as it leaves the mouth. Your wife stirs beside you but doesn't wake. The baby twitches once and settles back into sleep. You debate getting up, asking him if he's all right. But part of you already knows the answer, and the other part isn't ready to hear it out loud. Historical fact. In times of prolonged cold and isolation, especially during weather events like the Great Blizzard of 1888, it wasn't uncommon for people to slip into what we'd now call cold-induced delirium or sleep-talking episodes. With little sleep, inadequate nutrition and constant stress, the mind starts to loosen its grip. People spoke to themselves, to the fire, to dead relatives, to the wind. Some even claim the blizzard spoke back. You lie there and listen as the old man mutters about fence posts, soup bones, chickens that never came home. He's remembering another storm, maybe the winter of '59, maybe a frost that hit his childhood farm. It's hard to tell. His words are jumbled, drifting between memory and metaphor. At one point he says, "Don't name the cold. If you name it, it knows where to find you." You close your eyes and try to unhear that one. Here's your fringe fact. Some rural communities believed that sleep-talking during storms wasn't just a symptom of stress, but a kind of storm sickness, like the weather had found a way inside your mind. They'd say the snow got in his head. Superstitious, sure, but when you're half frozen and exhausted, it's hard not to start wondering if maybe the storm really is listening. There's even a story from Vermont, unverified, obviously, about a man who spent 3 days talking to the stove, claiming it was his dead wife trying to guide him through the cold. His family let him talk. He kept the fire going. They all survived, and no one corrected him after. You're not saying your father-in-law is talking to ghosts. You're not saying it either. But something's changed in him since the storm began. He doesn't look you in the eye anymore. He eats only when prompted, sleeps sitting up, boots still laced. But he always tends the fire with a kind of sacred intensity. Like he's not just feeding it wood, he's feeding it memory. There's debate among historians and psychologists about how widespread storm-induced delirium really was during 1888. Was it a common side effect of cold exposure and isolation, or just a handful of odd cases that got exaggerated over time? There's no way to know for sure. The records are scarce. But if you could bring any of those scholars here to this room on this night, you'd tell them to sit quietly and listen. Eventually the old man goes silent. The room feels heavier in his quiet than it did with his murmurs. You shift a little and tuck your arms closer to your chest. The fire snaps once, just enough to cast new shadows on the walls, dancing flickers that make the furniture look like it's breathing. Sleep comes in pieces, 15 minutes here, maybe 30 there, always shallow, always broken by a cough, or the creak of the roof, or the distant whistle of wind through some unnoticed crack in the wall. But this night it's different. Your dreams feel deeper, sharper. You see summer fields, your childhood home, your mother's hands braiding bread. You dream of the sea, of ships trapped in ice, of figures walking on frozen water, whispering names you almost remember. When you wake, your face is cold. There's a line of frost on your coat sleeve, like the storm reached in and tagged you while you slept. Across the room, your daughter is talking softly in her sleep. She says, "Don't forget the matches," then turns over and says nothing else. You don't mention it in the morning. No one talks about the night. Not what was said. Not what was heard. Everyone just rises slowly, stiff and stiff-lipped, going about the motions, tending the fire, checking the baby, stirring the pot of water that used to be soup. Your wife brushes straw from your son's hair, then sits down as if she's just remembered gravity exists. You think back to what the old man said about naming the cold. You wonder if you already have. Maybe you've all given it a name by now, just by surviving in its company, by feeding it parts of yourselves every night. And maybe, just maybe, that's why it hasn't left. Still, you speak gently to the fire when you add wood that afternoon, just in case. It's the 9th night or 10th, maybe 12th, who knows anymore. And something strange is happening to your dreams. They're not dreams exactly, not the usual ones. No tumbling nonsense or vague reruns of conversations that never happened. These are something else. They're vivid, specific, warm. You dream of summer, not a generic "it's warmer" summer, but your summer. Your childhood backyard, tall grass brushing your knees, the crackle of ice melting in a glass of lemonade, sun on your arms like a blessing, your mother's voice calling you inside because dinner's ready and the corn's still hot. It's all there, too perfectly. The sunlight flickers behind your eyes in your sleep like someone opened a window. You can feel it. The heat, the breeze, the thrum of cicadas in the trees. And then you wake up. You always do. You open your eyes expecting to be under the porch, sprawled on the back step in July, but instead you're wrapped in 3 blankets, face cold, throat dry, breath fogging into the dim glow of a nearly dead stove. The contrast hits so hard it almost knocks the air out of you. You blink and sit up, disoriented, staring at the ceiling. Same wooden beams, same walls blanketed in rugs, same tired faces nearby, bundled and dreaming, lips twitching with the effort of trying to rest in a house held together by towels and willpower. But all you can think about is that dream, that grass, that light. It felt real. Too real. You're not alone in this. At breakfast, if you can call a few boiled potato scraps breakfast, your daughter says she dreamed about the beach. "I was building a sandcastle," she mumbles, eyes still puffy. "And you were there, Papa. You were laughing." Your wife looks up, a spoon halfway to her mouth. "I dreamed of my old house," she says slowly. The hydrangeas were blooming again. I could smell them. Even Alfred, who has not said a single hopeful thing in days, mutters, "Had a dream about roasted pork and didn't even feel sad when I woke up. Just warm." He shrugs, then returns to stirring the nothing soup like it insulted his mother. Historical fact. After the Great Blizzard of 1888, survivors wrote letters and memoirs describing unusually vivid dreams during and after the storm. People dreamed of spring gardens, sun-drenched fields, summer weddings, picnics, open roads, and lost loved ones smiling in warm sunlight. The cold seemed to sharpen their memories into images so crisp they felt real. Some even called them visions, gifts from the mind to remind the body what it was fighting for. And the stranger part? These dreams weren't random. They were oddly collective. Entire families dreaming of the same kinds of scenes. Childhood places, meals once eaten, summer nights once lived. Not coordinated, not planned. Just eerily, beautifully common. One journal entry from a schoolteacher in Connecticut described it as the warmth in my head, planted by memory, when no warmth remained in the world. That's your quirky fringe fact tonight. A few spiritualists at the time claimed these dreams were evidence of seasonal soul reach. The idea that the human spirit, when pressed by extreme weather, reaches for its opposite to stay grounded. They believed winter's intensity pulled the soul toward memories of heat and growth as a survival mechanism, not just of the body, but of the self. Most folks dismissed it as nonsense. But in a frozen room with no light, the dream of sunlight might just be the only thing keeping you together. There's scholarly debate, naturally. Modern researchers have argued that the phenomenon is likely tied to hypothermia-related sleep patterns or sensory deprivation hallucinations. Others point to the psychological concept of counterbalancing, where the brain seeks the mental opposite of a present trauma in order to survive it. Either way, it doesn't explain why the dreams feel so good, so real. Like postcards from a world you almost forgot existed. You lie back that night hoping, actually hoping, for the dream to return. Not because you need rest, but because you want that light again. That warmth. You want to hear your mother's voice in the distance calling you in for supper. You want to feel the sun on your arms. You want the lie of it. Even if it's just for a few hours, you wrap yourself tighter. The fire's down to coals again, glowing dully through the iron grates. You smell smoke and old potatoes and something sour that's probably the dishwater no one dumped yesterday. But you close your eyes anyway, and there it is, the ocean, this time. Not crashing or wild, just lapping gently. Blue sky so wide it hums. You're standing ankle deep in cool waves, pants rolled, toes in the sand. You hear your children laughing behind you, splashing each other. Your wife is there too, somewhere just out of sight, calling out to bring the lunch basket over. Everything is slow and soft. You're not cold, you're not tired, and there is nothing waiting to collapse on your head or chase you from the sky. You don't want to wake up, but of course you do. You always do. The cold snaps you back like a rubber band. You suck in a sharp breath and open your eyes, immediately regretting it. The fire's dead now. The frost is forming again on the window quilt. Someone is coughing, and the baby starts to stir. But even as you rise and grab your coat to tend the stove, the dream lingers. Like steam in a glass, like a candle scent after it's blown out. You feel it in your chest, and for the first time in days, maybe more, you realize something that startles you. You believe you're going to make it. Not because the storm is ending, not because food has magically appeared or firewood has grown legs and walked in from the woods, but because you remember what the sun feels like, because your mind hasn't given up, because some part of you, buried under all the cold and fear and sleepless nights, still knows how to dream. Sometime in the middle of that same bitter, dream-heavy night, you wake up with your fingers tingling, not from pins and needles, but from something far colder. It's not pain, not at first, it's absence, a numbness, dull and creeping, as if your hands have wandered too far from the fire and now don't know how to come back. You sit up, groggy and disoriented, and flex your fingers. They move sluggishly. Your breath catches. You hold your hands in front of your face. Even in the dim glow of the nearly dead stove, you can tell something's not right. Your fingertips are pale, pale like wax, too pale. You rub them together fast, then harder, trying to spark some feeling back into them. You stuff them under your armpits, grit your teeth. The burning doesn't come, not yet. Just dull thudding like someone tapping a bell inside your knuckles. You shake your head to clear it. You don't want to panic. But frostbite is one of those things you don't really understand until it's knocking on your door. Or rather, until it's already inside the house, sitting on your chest, poking at your bones. You glance around the room. Everyone else is still sleeping. The kids are all bundled like burritos, faces tucked deep into woolen nests. Your wife is curled around the baby, her hand draped protectively over the tiny body. Alfred is face down near the stove, one arm dangling, snoring like a beast in a cave. You get up slowly, trying not to wake anyone, and shuffle toward the stove. Your feet hurt too now, numb and heavy in your boots, like you're walking on bricks. You kneel down and open the stove door. The coals are barely alive, just a weak orange blush in the ash. You throw in what's left. 2 sticks of brittle wood and some crumpled newspaper you'd hidden behind the curtain. The fire sputters, groans, then catches with a soft whoosh that feels like a miracle. You hold your hands out, not too close, just enough to let the heat tease the numbness back to life, and that's when the pain starts. The burning is sudden and violent. It feels like every nerve in your fingertips is waking up with a scream. You almost pull back, but you don't. You grit your teeth and press your hands a little closer. The pain means blood is moving. That's good. That's everything. Historical fact. Frostbite wasn't uncommon during the blizzard of 1888, especially among those trapped in homes with failing stoves or stranded outdoors during whiteouts. It starts quiet. Numbness. Loss of feeling. But when the body warms back up, the pain hits like fire, sometimes so severe it causes fainting. In rural areas, families tried everything from wrapping limbs in hot towels to soaking feet in tepid water. Anything to avoid the blackened skin and amputations that often followed. You remember a story you heard once about a boy who slept through a storm like this and woke up with both feet purple and stiff. They tried everything. By spring he'd lost 4 toes. You told yourself it was just a tale. Now you're not so sure. Your fringe fact tonight. During the storm, some people wore meat, actual raw meat, on their hands and feet to protect against frostbite. A farmer in upstate New York wrapped his hands in bacon fat and tied it with twine before bed. Said the grease kept the cold out. Sounds absurd, but apparently he kept all 10 fingers. Meanwhile, a neighbour lost 3 just carrying a bucket of water across the yard. You don't have bacon. You don't even have enough soap, but you do have your hands. And for now, they're still yours. Once the pain subsides into a dull throb, you pull on your gloves and return to your spot on the floor. You lie down slowly, curling your body tighter this time, tucking your hands deep beneath your coat. Your feet are still cold, blocks of ice wrapped in leather, but the fire's growing stronger. You close your eyes and try to focus on that warmth, on the crackling, on the fact that your fingers still bend. There's debate, of course, about how frostbite was treated during the storm. Some families used warm cloths, as we mentioned. Others had no idea what to do and did more harm than good. Rubbing snow on frozen skin was a common myth, one that actually made things worse. Doctors at the time had limited knowledge and even less ability to travel, trapped like everyone else. So most of the time it was up to the cold, tired families huddled in their homes to guess what might help and pray they guessed right. You fall asleep again, finally, only to wake an hour later with your wife staring at you. Her eyes are wide, worried. "Your hands," she says, taking one of them in hers. Her thumb traces your palm. They're freezing. She pulls your gloves off and wraps your fingers in the end of her scarf, then presses them against her chest. The warmth is instant, and somehow even more painful. But you let her hold them. Outside, the wind rises again, rattling the window frames and sending another dusting of snow through the cracks. You hear it settling on the floor. Not much, but enough to remind you who's still in charge. Your wife doesn't speak again. She just holds your hand until your fingers stop shaking. And that night, when you drift into sleep again, your dreams are a little darker. Less sunlight, less green. You dream of ice climbing up your legs like vines. Of your house sinking into snow like a slow ship. Of frost reaching through the walls with cold blue fingers tugging at your coat. You wake with your hand still pressed against her chest, and for one wild second, you wonder if it was a dream at all. But then you see the pink returning to your fingertips. The fire still breathing. The baby still sleeping. And you know you made it through another night. Barely. You're not sure what wakes you this time. The wind, a shifting board, or that strange sixth sense you've developed that whispers something's wrong before your eyes even open. Whatever it is, you rise fast. Too fast. Your head spins. Your breath fogs inches from your face. And the first thing you see is your eldest son standing by the window, barefoot, coat half on, staring out as if he's sleepwalking through a dream he hasn't finished having. You blink hard. "Hey," you whisper, your voice cracking like thin ice. "What are you doing?" He doesn't answer. He doesn't even turn around. He just keeps staring at the window quilt, the one you nailed up 2 days ago, his body angled like he's pulled towards something on the other side. His hand lifts, slow and eerie, as if he's reaching for the snow-packed boards behind the blanket. Your heart drops into your stomach. You scramble up, your joints protesting. "Son," you repeat louder this time, "look at me." You cross the room as quietly as the old floorboards allow, but he doesn't flinch. You tug his shoulder gently, and when he finally turns his face toward you, his eyes look wrong, distant, glassy, unfocused. You've seen that look before. On your father-in-law muttering nonsense to a dying fire, on the neighbour who'd lost someone 2 barns over, on yourself in the mirror last night when you didn't recognise your own expression. Your son whispers something. You lean closer. "What was that?" He swallows. His lips are dry. "I heard them," he murmurs, voice thin as a thread. "Outside." Every hair on your neck stands up. "Heard who?" He shrugs one shoulder, eyes sliding back to the quilt. "People," he says, "calling. Your blood goes cold, and not from the drafts." Historical fact. During the blizzard of 1888, numerous survivors reported hearing voices in the wind. Not literal ones, though some swore they were, but the storm could distort sound in eerie ways. Snow-laden gusts funneled through alleyways, chimneys, and broken windows, creating moans, whistles, and uncanny howls that resembled crying, shouting, even whispering. People trapped indoors for days swore neighbours were calling out, only to discover later that those neighbours had never left their own homes. Some believed it was the wind. Others thought it was stress or sleep deprivation. A few suggested something stranger. The fringe fact tonight may unsettle you more. Scattered accounts exist, mostly from rural areas, of storm sufferers sleepwalking into the blizzard. Drawn, they claimed, by voices. Some surfaced alive hours later, confused and frostbitten. Some didn't surface at all. These stories often blurred the lines between folklore and fact, but they were reported often enough that families began tying twine around the wrists of known sleepwalkers, attaching them to bedposts like fragile living anchors. You grip your son's arm, gently but firmly, and steer him back toward the nest of blankets. He follows without resisting, but his gaze keeps drifting toward the window. You tuck him between his siblings, wedge him safely in the middle like a scroll between bookends, then sit beside him until his breathing deepens into something steadier. Your wife stirs, blinking awake, but her eyes soften when she sees you all huddled close. You whisper, "He was sleepwalking." Her face pales. She wraps her arms around the baby a little tighter. You lie awake now, listening. And as you're listening, you hear it too. Not a voice. Not really. More like a shape of a voice. A suggestion carried on a shift of air. A low, wavering hum that curls through the cracks in the boards. It rises, falls, catches on a pressure in the wind that almost sounds like syllables. You close your eyes tight. "No," you tell yourself. "Just the storm, just the damned storm." But your stomach knots anyway. You keep watch over your son for the next hour, your hand resting lightly on his back as he sleeps. His face twitches now and then, dreams tugging him somewhere warm, hopefully. You decide you can't risk this happening again. Not with the cold still dangerous. Not with the snow piled so high the front door is practically a wall. With morning, if you can call it morning, comes more strange reports. Alfred swears he heard knocking during the night. Your wife says she thought someone whispered her name. Your daughter admits she dreamed of someone telling her to get up, even though she couldn't see who it was. You all look at each other, expressions tight, wary. The room feels smaller again. The air charged, like static waiting to jump. There's debate among scholars, naturally, about whether storm-induced auditory hallucinations were widespread or anecdotal. Some blame sensory deprivation, hunger, fatigue, or the immense pressure changes that accompany blizzards. Others suggest the human mind simply doesn't handle isolation well, and will create company if none is available. More imaginative theories, recorded in letters and private journals, hint at something else entirely, that extreme storms have a kind of personality, a voice of their own, shaped by wind and fear. You're not here to judge the science. You're here to keep your son from walking out into a frozen wasteland because some corner of his brain thinks the snow is calling him home. You take precautions, not all of them dignified. First, you rearrange the sleeping nest so the children are farthest from the window. Then you move the heavy dresser in front of the front door, not to block it entirely, but enough that no one could open it silently in the night. You tie a scarf loosely around your son's wrist and secure the other end to your own coat belt. Not binding him, just making sure you'll wake if he moves. Your father-in-law watches all this with hollowed-out eyes. "You hear it too, don't you?" he murmurs. You don't answer, because answering would make it real. The day drags on. Everyone jumps at every creak. The storm outside shifts tempo, now a low moan, now a sudden shriek. You try to distract yourselves with tasks, cleaning the same pot twice, rearranging blankets, boiling more snow, checking the roof for cracks, but the tension is thick enough to chew. When night finally falls, the wind rises again, harder, wilder, like it's furious you've figured out how to ignore it. You all curl up in the nest, a single braided mass of limbs and wool. The fire pops, the walls shudder, someone snores, and just when your eyelids begin to droop, you feel a tug on the scarf at your belt. You jolt awake. Your son is shifting, restless, his face pinched, his lips moving. "No," he breathes. "I can't. It's too cold." You hold him close, whispering softly, grounding him, pulling him back from whatever dream cliff he's standing on. Eventually he relaxes, goes limp. You stay awake the rest of the night. And when dawn finally arrives, a pale, tentative blue, you swear the storm sounds disappointed. You're exhausted, but no one walked into the snow, not tonight. You wake to silence, not the eerie kind that makes you stiffen and scan the room for movement, but a silence so deep, so complete, that it feels holy. A silence you'd almost forgotten existed. You don't hear the wind clawing at the walls. You don't hear snow scraping across the roof like gravel. No groaning beams, no shrieking gales, just breath. Sleep-heavy, human breath, rising and falling all around you like the tide. You hold perfectly still. The weight of your son's arm is across your chest, warm and heavy. The scarf connecting your wrists is still intact. You glance around the room slowly, not daring to disturb the moment. Everyone's still asleep, bundled like a pile of laundry on the front room floor. Even Alfred, who usually wakes at every creak, is snoring into a pillow that used to belong to the baby's cradle. The stove glows faintly, embers still alive, and then you notice something strange. The light. It's leaking around the edges of the blanket over the window. Not grey like before, but golden. Dim, yes, but undeniably different. It has colour again. It's not the flat, smothered light of a world swallowed by snow. It's sunlight. You sit up slowly, the stiffness in your joints like rusted hinges. Your breath catches in your throat. You cross the room to the window, gently peel back the frozen blanket, and there it is. A wall of snow. But above it, just above the drift line, is open sky. Blue. Pale and fragile like porcelain, but sky nonetheless. The first you've seen in over a week. And the light pouring down from it makes the snow glow like a field of diamonds. You blink, not trusting it at first, expecting a gust of white to crash against the pane and prove you wrong. But it doesn't. The storm is gone. Historical fact. The blizzard of 1888 ended abruptly on March 14th, after pounding the northeast for nearly 4 days. When the skies finally cleared, they revealed a surreal landscape. Cities buried, railroads erased, streets transformed into valleys of snow. In some places, the drifts stood higher than second-story windows. A bright sun followed, ironically cheerful, as families emerged blinking into a world they barely recognized. You throw open the door, not all the way because it won't open all the way. A mountain of snow still presses against it, but the top few feet have crumbled, softening, giving way. You dig at it with your hands, then with a soup pot, then with the lid of a storage box. The snow is wet, heavy, beginning to melt, and through a narrow gap you carve at shoulder height, you push your head outside. The air hits your face like a memory. It smells like wet earth, smoke, and hope. The sun is low but warm, kissing your cheeks like an apology. You exhale sharply, your breath rising not as fog but as nothing at all. And then comes the strangest sensation of all, heat. Real, gentle heat on your skin. You stagger back into the house, eyes wide, heart pounding. Everyone's still asleep, unaware of what's changed. You want to shout it, to wake them all, throw open the windows, rip the blankets down, but you don't. Not yet. You sit by the stove instead, let your hands soak in the last of the ember heat, and breathe. Here's your fringe fact. In the aftermath of the blizzard, families who had been trapped indoors for days often experienced what survivors called the snow shock, an emotional response to sunlight and silence after the storm. It wasn't always joyful. For some, the light felt too sharp, the quiet too loud. Some cried, others collapsed from sheer relief. One diary entry described it as stepping out of the grave and finding the world still turning. There's scholarly debate about the psychological effect of this sudden return to normalcy. Some believe the shift was too jarring, that it triggered a kind of post-traumatic paralysis. Others claim it galvanized communities, inspired a rapid rush to rescue, rebuild, and recover. Either way, the first step out the door was always the hardest. Later that morning, one by one, your family stirs. Your daughter is the first to wake. She stretches like a cat, sniffs the air and frowns. It smells different. You grin. It is different. She blinks. Is it over? You nod. She starts crying immediately. Not big, loud sobs, just quiet, slow tears that slide down her cheeks without fanfare. She wipes them with the back of her sleeve and smiles, embarrassed. Sorry, I don't know why. But you do. You absolutely do. You wake the others gently, and soon the whole room is stirring. Your wife cries too, though she hides it by kissing the baby's cheeks over and over. Alfred just slumps against the wall, head tipped back, eyes closed, whispering something that might be a prayer or might just be thank God on repeat. Then comes the work. You carve out the door fully. The children begin helping, scooping snow with bowls and plates, passing it like buckets in a fire line. Your father-in-law stands in the doorway, eyes raised toward the sky, unmoving. He doesn't speak. Doesn't have to. His breath fogs slightly, but only just. You finally push the door open fully, wide enough to step outside. The snow is nearly chest-high, but manageable. The top layers are melting under the touch of the sun. Steam rises in tiny curls. The street beyond is unrecognizable, more like a canyon carved into a glacier than the road where your children used to play. Fences have disappeared. Trees wear thick white coats. Roof lines poke out like lost hats. You take a cautious step outside, then another. The snow crunches beneath your boots, not brittle anymore, but soft, giving. You stand there for a long time, staring up at the clear sky, and then, from somewhere down the street, you hear a voice. Faint, real, not the storm's whisper, not a dream's trick. A man calling out, "We're digging on Elm! Everyone all right in there?" Your throat catches. You shout back. It's the first time you've heard another human voice not trapped in this house, in over a week. And just like that, the world starts coming back. The voice carries through the cold like a flare, and for a moment you just stand there with your boots buried in snow and your mouth slightly open. You heard it. You heard someone else. Not a whisper in the wind, not a trick of your ears, but a real voice. Rough, loud, and very much alive. You cup your hands around your mouth and shout back, "We're here!" Your voice cracks, unused to the effort, but it cuts through the still air. "Everyone's alive!" There's a pause, long enough to stir up your nerves again, and then the reply comes, faint but cheerful. "Good to hear it. We've got shovels coming. Stay warm," and that's when it sinks in. The storm is gone, the world's waking up, and people are finding each other again. You duck back inside, face flushed from the cold and something else. Relief, adrenaline, maybe even joy. The room is humming now, low and hopeful. Everyone's moving with more purpose. Blankets are being shaken out. Coats are tightened. Your cousin Alfred's even rubbing his face like he's just remembered he has one. Your wife is clearing a spot by the fire to try and make real food. Not melted snow soup. Actual, hot, chewable food. You share the news quickly. A man on Elm. Shovels on the way. Help. The word feels foreign in your mouth. That kind of news spreads fast, even in a room of half-frozen people. Suddenly, you're all trying to prepare for re-entry. But what does that even look like when the world outside is a frozen sculpture, and your house still feels like a bunker? Your first task is practical. Dig a path. You, Alfred, and your daughter, who insists on helping despite being half your size, work at the snowbank that had swallowed your front door. It's wet now, heavy, and breaks away in clumps. Your back aches within minutes, but you keep going. Every scoop is one step closer to normal, to spring, to hearing birds again, for crying out loud. Historical fact. After the blizzard, it took days, sometimes weeks, for towns to dig themselves out. Drifts reached the second story in many areas. Men formed shovel brigades to clear roads, often without direction, coordination, or rest. In New York City alone, more than 400 people were employed just to dig tunnels through the snow for basic movement. Train cars remained buried. Horses and carts had to be located, sometimes by poking sticks into the snow and hoping to hit wood or harness. You don't have a stick, but you do have a soup ladle, and right now, that's enough. As you dig, Your daughter hums, absently, like she doesn't realize she's doing it. It's a lullaby your wife used to sing when she was small, and you smile despite yourself. The rhythm of the work matches the rhythm of the song. Scoop, toss, breathe, scoop, toss, breathe. That's when you uncover the porch swing. It's a silly thing to cry over, and yet, there you are, standing in the middle of a carved-out path, tears suddenly sliding down your wind-chapped face because that old swing, the one your wife painted blue last spring, the one your kids fought over every afternoon until someone was pushed too hard and sent crying indoors, it's still there, not broken, not buried completely, just waiting, like it knew you'd come back for it. Fringe fact for this chapter. Some families found bizarre objects uncovered after the blizzard, an entire horse cart parked on the wrong street, a neighbour's chicken coop on their roof, even a man's trousers frozen solid and standing upright in the snow. A boy in New Jersey reportedly discovered his dog alive in a snow tunnel it had dug between houses. The storm buried everything, but it didn't erase it. The world came back in bits, like a jigsaw puzzle you had to dig for. By late afternoon, the voice returns. The man from Elm appears in the distance, no longer just sound but a figure, bundled in fur and snow-caked boots, dragging a wooden sled behind him. It holds a shovel, some dry firewood, and something wrapped in cloth. He waves. You wave back. His name's Samuel. He says he's been going house to house since sunrise, checking for survivors. Figured someone ought to, he says with a grin, revealing 3 missing teeth. Besides, I was going stir-crazy. You invite him inside. Your wife pours the last of the broth into a tin mug, and he drinks it like it's the finest stew he's ever had. Then he unwraps the cloth bundle. Bread. Real bread. It's tough and dry and more crust than crumb, but you swear it glows in the lamplight. He explains that his sister had a stash in her root cellar. He took what he could carry and decided to share. People forget, he says, tearing off a chunk, but food's no good to you if your neighbour's dead. There's scholarly debate about how long-term social behaviour was affected by the blizzard. Some argue it strengthened communities, brought people together through hardship. Others claim it deepened mistrust, as some families hoarded resources or refused shelter to others. But in the first few days after the storm, the stories were largely ones of generosity. People shared food, firewood, and tools, even when they had barely enough for themselves. It wasn't charity, it was survival through solidarity. As evening creeps in, you light the lamps early, not out of necessity but habit. The room glows warm now, the walls no longer closing in but holding you. The baby laughs for the first time in days, just a little squeak, but it cracks the ice around everyone's heart. You eat bread, real bread. You talk, you even laugh. And when Samuel leaves, promising to come back with more firewood tomorrow, your daughter hugs him without hesitation. Night falls, and this time you don't dread it. The fire is full, the drifts are melting, and the silence feels earned. You lie down in the nest of blankets, but it doesn't feel like a barricade anymore. It feels like a bed. You close your eyes and think, not of surviving, but of the porch swing in spring, gently swaying in the wind. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you don't dream of summer, you dream of tomorrow. The first full day of calm comes with a strange kind of urgency, not the frantic, survival-driven pace of the blizzard itself, but the low-burn frenzy of catching up. You're not just digging out paths anymore, you're doing math. Not with numbers, but with blankets, quilts, coats, firewood, heat. There's a new game in town now, and it's called Who Gets Warm and When. Because surprise, just because the blizzard's over doesn't mean the cold is. If anything, it's worse now. With the sky clear, the wind has backed off, but the temperature has plummeted. The storm took its noise and chaos with it, but left behind a dry, biting cold that settles in your bones and refuses to budge. There's no more snow falling, but what's here will stay for a while. Weeks, if not longer. So you do what any storm-tested parent does when you've got 1 stove, 6 bodies, and too many frost-prone fingers. You start rationing the heat. Historical fact. In the days after the Great Blizzard of 1888, temperatures in the northeast remained dangerously low. Many families who survived the storm itself struggled through the aftermath. Frostbite cases surged and pneumonia took hold in already weakened households. Without modern insulation or electric heat, people had to get creative. They developed elaborate heat rotation systems, sometimes using only one room and rotating who got closest to the fire, You decide the front room, where the stove lives, is now the warm zone. It gets priority. That means everything else, the hallway, the bedrooms, even the kitchen, is sacrificed to the freeze. Doors get shut and towels rolled tight to block the bottoms. You hang up an old curtain across the archway to trap heat like a net. The baby stays close to the stove at all times. Your wife, Alfred, and the kids rotate shifts like sleepy guards in a fortress of warmth. And then comes the blanket math. You have 5 quilts, 4 coats, and about a dozen random layers, shawls, scarves, a mangled poncho someone swears is from a travelling carnival. You arrange them like puzzle pieces. The best insulation on the baby, the thickest coat on your wife. You can't win an argument with her, so you stop trying. And 1 quilt draped over whoever's off rotation, bundled in the back corner of the room like a baked potato waiting its turn in the oven. You make rules. 1 person can sit by the stove at a time. No one gets both coat and quilt unless they're sick. If your feet are warm, give up your boots to someone who isn't. Quirky fringe fact. In several Blizzard-era accounts, families took to sleeping in shifts, not just to rotate warmth, but to ensure someone was always tending the fire. In one Connecticut farmhouse, a mother rang a bell every 2 hours to wake the next person for stove duty. One man in Pennsylvania had a rule that whoever got the most sleep the night before had to take the coldest corner the next night. Fairness was non-negotiable. Survival was a democracy. Barely. The kids grumble at first, especially your youngest son, who swears the cat keeps stealing his quilt when he turns his back. You point out that the cat is family now too, and unless he wants to start licking himself to keep warm, he better share. There's some humour in it. You can feel it returning faintly. The way Alfred raises his eyebrows dramatically when he gets his turn by the stove, like he's just been named king, or how your daughter dramatically flops onto the floor with a wool blanket and says, "Bury me, I'm done." Everyone laughs. It's weak and cracked and hoarse, but it's real. Scholars debate whether heat rationing strategies were truly effective in a long-term physiological sense, or more of a psychological balm, keeping people sane by giving them something to control. But the lived experience, it's not theory, it's real, and it's freezing, and it requires planning. Every log counts, every scrap of wool, every ounce of patience. Midday, you try to do some repair work on the stovepipe. Smoke's been leaking. Not badly, but enough that Alfred wheezes if he sits too close. You wrap your scarf around your mouth and climb out through the window again, into snow that's now crusty and sun-glared. It sparkles so beautifully it makes your teeth ache. Up on the roof, you dig out the pipe, knock loose the ice cap that formed, and nearly fall in the process. But you don't. And when you come back in, boots soaked and fingers aching, the stove pulls smoke better than it has in days. You don't get a prize. No one cheers. But your wife squeezes your hand as she passes, and that's better. The rationing continues into the night. Your son has a small cough now, dry, irritating. You shift him up the rotation. Your wife insists you take her place near the fire, and you're too tired to argue, so you accept. The heat curls up into your boots. Not quite enough, but close. You wrap the baby's blanket tighter around your legs and close your eyes. That's when it hits you. You're managing and not thriving, not relaxing, not even resting really, but managing. Surviving used to feel like a wild scramble. Now it's just systems, processes, a rhythm. You've gone from chaos to rules, from improvisation to strategy. There's control again. Not much, but some. And with control comes calm. You fall asleep that night to the sound of gentle breathing, the soft crackle of the fire, and a strange new silence. The kind that comes not from being trapped, but from being still. There's still snow, still cold, still risk. But you've got a system and you've got a rhythm. And tonight everyone is warm. Enough night again. You've lost track of how many. After the storm broke and the sun came back, it seemed like time would return with it. Order, routine, clocks that mattered. But it didn't. The days remained sluggish, thick as syrup. The nights, even slower and quieter. Too quiet. You lie in the dark, arms crossed over your chest like you're waiting for a burial, and you realise something strange. You miss the storm. Not the danger, not the cold, not the creeping fear that any minute the roof might collapse or the fire might die or someone would walk out the door in a dream and never come back. Not that. You miss the sound, the constant roar, the pressure in your ears, the wildness in the walls. Back then, the storm made the decisions. You just responded. It was terrifying, yes, but also simple. Now with the blizzard gone, the silence feels more complicated. It's too wide, too open. It invites thoughts you didn't have time for before, and memories, and questions, and the kind of stillness that makes your heart beat too loudly in your own ears. You shift on the floor. A loose board groans under your back. The fire crackles softly. Someone coughs. Someone else murmurs in their sleep. A spoon clinks against the side of a pot no one had the energy to wash. But other than that, nothing. Historical fact. Survivors of the Great Blizzard of 1888 often reported a haunting silence in the days after the storm. The wind's sudden departure left behind not peace, but a kind of vacuum. Cities and towns buried under drifts felt like ghost towns. No carriages moved, no bells rang, no dogs barked. It was the kind of silence that demanded attention and made people uncomfortable. And there was another layer to it. Many homes still lacked fuel. No more chopping wood in a storm. Now it was scavenging. People began burning furniture, picture frames, even family heirlooms. The irony of surviving the storm only to freeze afterward was not lost on anyone. In your house, you still have just enough wood to make it 2 more nights, maybe 3. Samuel hasn't returned yet, though you think you saw his tracks in the snow today heading east. You're not worried. Yet! What you are is restless. You sit up. The room is dimly lit by the fire's glow, and shadows dance on the walls like they're trying to entertain you. Your wife shifts, pulls the baby closer. Alfred snores once, loud and abrupt, then returns to silence. You quietly step over your daughter, whose leg is sticking out from beneath a quilt like a claim staked on a better world. You crouch by the stove and feed it the last 2 sticks of kindling from the basket. It's not much, but it'll keep the coals alive until morning. You warm your hands and look around the room, cataloguing every detail, even though you've seen it 1,000 times. The socks drying by the hearth, the ladder-back chair you almost burned 2 nights ago before your wife stopped you, the wall where the frost has receded and left behind strange white streaks like veins. Here's your fringe fact. Some people after the storm swore they could hear the snow long after it stopped falling. Not wind, not creaks. Snow, settling, moving, whispering. It wasn't real, probably. Just nerves, exhaustion, and stress layered together like a snowdrift in the mind. But once you've lived through something that enormous, the silence afterward isn't silent at all. It's full of echoes, ghosts of noise that still want to be heard. You creep toward the window and peel back the corner of the quilt. Outside, moonlight bounces off the snow like silver fire. The drifts haven't shrunk much, but they've changed shape. Melted just enough to begin collapsing in on themselves. You can almost see the street again, a mailbox, the top of a lamppost. Still no people, just trails, lines cut through white, the paths of the other survivors digging out their lives one shovel scoop at a time. It's comforting, not loud, not social, but present. There's debate among researchers about the role of silence in post-disaster psychology. Some say it fosters reflection, others argue it creates a vacuum for trauma to echo. But no scholar has lived in a house like yours, with frost on the mirror and soup in the pot that tastes like regret. You return to your spot on the floor and lie down again. Everyone's still breathing. No one's coughing too hard. The baby's warm. You should sleep. But your mind is racing. You're thinking about your brother's farm 3 towns over, wondering if they made it. You're thinking about the stores in town, what shape they're in, who opened their doors first, who held back. You're thinking about next year, about spring, about whether your hands will ever feel fully warm again. And the silence answers none of it. In the dark you start to hum. It's unintentional at first. Just a low vibration in your throat, half-forgotten tune, something your mother sang when you were small. The melody winds through the room like thread through a needle. Your daughter stirs, then hums along half asleep. Your wife joins in without opening her eyes. It's not a song you know anymore, just a rhythm, sound, shared. You hum until your eyes grow heavy, until the silence feels less like an enemy and more like space for something new. By morning, the silence has settled into something more bearable. Not friendly exactly, but familiar. Like an old coat that never really fit but still keeps the wind off. The hum from the night before lingers faintly in your memory, a quiet thread that tied you all together for a few hours. No one talks about it at breakfast. No one has to. Breakfast itself is laughable, if you want to call it that. The last of the flour has been scraped into a paste, part water, part hope, and fried into something that crackles like paper and tastes like firewood. But it's hot, and it's food, so you eat it gratefully, watching the baby smack her lips and gum the corner of a crust like it's a feast. The snow's begun its slow retreat. Outside the window, the drifts have sunk slightly, their edges slumping like defeated soldiers. Icicles hang like fangs from the eaves, melting one drop at a time, each fall a soft plink you can hear when the room goes still. The sky is still pale, the colour of skim milk, but the wind has stayed away. That, at least, feels like a win. After breakfast, you dress in every layer you have left that isn't damp or stolen by the cat, and you step out again to check the chimney and scan for tracks. There are a few, human ones this time. Boots. Someone's passed by recently, not far off. Maybe Samuel again, maybe someone else. The idea of strangers walking through snow without screaming wind around them feels surreal. Just days ago, movement meant risk. Now it means reconnection. Historical fact. After the blizzard, as the snow slowly receded, people began forming informal rescue patrols. Without reliable communication or government response, communities relied on each other, digging out homes, delivering food, even checking for bodies in abandoned wagons or collapsed barns. These efforts weren't coordinated by officials, but by farmers, tradesmen, housewives, and teenagers armed with shovels and coffee cans. You step farther out into the yard and scan the horizon. The silence isn't total anymore. There are sounds returning. Somewhere far off, the caw of a crow. Closer, a spade striking earth, muffled, and then a voice. No words, just tone. The cadence of someone talking, not to you, but to someone. It's faint, but real. You hurry back inside, breath puffing white as you slide the door closed behind you. Your wife looks up from where she's kneeling by the stove, adjusting the baby's booties with the precision of a watchmaker. She sees your expression and raises a brow. Another person? You nod. Close. Alfred perks up. Someone should go check on the Joneses. He's been saying that for 3 days now. You're starting to think it's his way of not thinking about his own house, the one he left behind in a panic when the storm first hit, assuming he'd be back the next day. Tomorrow, you say? We'll go tomorrow. There's still plenty to do today. You and your daughter take turns shoveling, making your path wider. She claims the shovel is taller than she is, which is almost true, but that doesn't stop her from working like she's being paid in hot cocoa and promises. The sky stays calm. Occasionally a breeze picks up and tosses snow from the branches in flurries that look like confetti. It's so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears. Fringe fact. During the great melt that followed the blizzard, some families reported finding strange items buried in the snow. Postcards, wedding veils, a taxidermy owl, a whole door. Objects had blown from one town to the next. Some carried miles. One farmer found a woman's shoe wedged in his barn rafters, and when he took it to town to return it, it turned out she lived 20 miles away. The storm had its own mail system, apparently. You find nothing that exotic, but your daughter does unearth a bucket you didn't know you'd lost. Victory, she shouts, holding it up like a trophy. She bows to the imaginary crowd. You clap, because after everything it really is a win. Later, as the sun begins to dip again, early as always this time of year, you catch your reflection in the glass pane of the window. Your face startles you. Not because you look bad, though you do. It's the change. Your cheeks are leaner. Your beard is wild. There are lines around your eyes that weren't there before. But there's something else too. A steadiness. A kind of grit you didn't know you had until the storm knocked on your door and invited itself inside. There's scholarly debate, naturally, about how trauma shapes identity. Some argue that survival doesn't build character. It just reveals what's already buried under the day-to-day noise. Others insist that extreme hardship rewires the brain, that it makes new things possible, new strengths, new fears, new bonds. You're not sure where you land on that, but you know this. You're not the same man who hung quilts over windows and prayed the roof wouldn't cave in. You're not the same father who panicked at the first cough. You're not the same neighbour who used to wave politely and keep to yourself. You're more now, more tired, more thin, more cracked around the edges, but also more present, more connected, and deeply, stubbornly alive. As night falls, you build the fire high again. No more rationing tonight. There's enough wood for one more full burn, and it's worth it. You feed the flame until it stretches tall and orange, warming the whole front room. The blankets come off shoulders. People breathe a little easier. The cat sprawls in front of the hearth like she owns the place. You eat soup, thin and watery, but flavoured this time with something real. Onion, maybe. Or maybe just hunger's imagination. You don't care. It's hot, and it fills the space. Then someone suggests a game. Not a board game. You don't have those, but something simple. Say a word, your wife says, and we'll go around and tell the first memory we think of. You're tired, but you agree. She starts. July. Your daughter goes first. Her birthday. Your son says fireworks. Alfred mutters something about watermelon that you pretend not to hear in detail. You close your eyes, think of rivers and hammocks and the sound of frogs by a pond. Next word, school, then bread, then light. It goes on like that until the fire burns low again. No one wants to stop. No one says it, but you all know. This is how it happens. This is how people come back from a blizzard. One memory at a time. You wake to footsteps crunching outside. Not your own, not Samuel's. He hasn't come back yet, though you're trying not to worry. No, this is more than one person. Multiple sets of boots, soft but sure, moving steadily through the thawing snow. Then comes the knock, firm, polite, and real. Not the imagined tapping from blizzard days. Not a hallucination. Not the storm whispering riddles. Just someone knocking on your door. You blink the sleep out of your eyes and scramble up, bumping your knee on a box and swearing under your breath. Your wife is already halfway to the door, robe wrapped tight around her, expression somewhere between suspicion and hope. You beat her there and pull open the wood slowly just in case. 3 figures stand in the yard, faces red from the cold, scarves pulled down, eyes crinkled with something almost like joy. You recognise one of them immediately. It's Tom Dawson from the feed store, bundled up and standing with a shovel in one hand and a lantern in the other. His beard is stiff with frost, and there's a little blood on one knuckle, but he grins wide when he sees you. "Hey there, neighbour," he says. "Thought we'd come dig you out." Behind him stand his eldest daughter, Maggie, your son's schoolmate, and a young man you don't know, probably from another block. All 3 are sweating despite the cold, steam rising off their shoulders. You laugh. You actually laugh. It bursts out before you can help it, loud and real and absurd. Because there they are. People, not just a voice, not just a shadow on the snow. Actual people with working legs and shovels and red faces and eyes that say you made it, and so did we. "Come in," you say, stepping back. "It's warm. Well, warmer." Tom steps into the front room and he immediately sees the baby and lets out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be a little storm survivor." Your wife hands him a cup of something. It's mostly hot water, but he drinks it like it's brandy. Maggie kneels by your daughter and asks if she's been out sledding. The look your daughter gives her in response is so deadpan it makes Alfred cackle from the far corner. Tom sets down his lantern and rubs his hands together. "We're organising a crew, clearing roads, trying to get to the chapel, see if we can set up a meal hall there. You in?" Historical fact. In the days immediately following the Great Blizzard of 1888, neighbourhoods became their own governments. With telegraph lines down, roads impassable, and official assistance delayed, families turned to one another. Churches became supply stations. Schoolhouses turned into first aid posts. Entire city blocks cooperated to dig out key pathways and locate the missing. It was messy, desperate, and profoundly human. You nod before he even finishes. "Absolutely, just let me grab my coat." And that's how it begins. Again. A new rhythm, but this one has forward motion. You dig. Not for escape now, but for connection. You clear the path to the next house, then the next. At the 3rd house, an old woman answers the door and starts crying. She grabs your arm and won't let go for a full minute. Doesn't say a word. Just holds on like you're her son returned from war. You let her. Word spreads fast. By midday, there are 9 of you working shoulder to shoulder. A boy from the hardware store brings a sled piled with crackers and condensed milk. Someone finds a cow that somehow lived through the storm in a collapsed barn, and within hours there's hot milk in tin mugs. You swear it tastes like gold. By the time the sun sets, your entire block is connected by rough, narrow paths. Like veins, like lines on a map. Inside, the fire is burning well and your wife is sewing again, mending torn blankets and worn sleeves. Your daughter teaches the baby to clap. Alfred has found a new obsession with cleaning the rust off the tools, and you're not about to stop him. That night, someone starts singing again. Not you, this time. Your youngest son curled up beside the stove, humming nonsense that turns into something familiar. A tune from a schoolhouse hymn. Your daughter picks it up. Then your wife. Then you. Then even Alfred, though his voice is low and scratchy and sounds more like muttering into soup. It's not a performance. It's not pretty. But it fills the room like warmth. Fringe fact for your final chapter. In the weeks after the blizzard, many families reported experiencing something they described as a shift. A turning inward, followed by a push outward. The storm had pulled them into themselves, stripped things bare. But what followed wasn't just rebuilding, it was reimagining. People met neighbours they'd never spoken to. Children played in streets that had been silent. Meals were shared with strangers. Some towns called it the snow's silver lining. Others called it survival. Either way, something changed. There's still clean-up ahead. Still snow to melt and food to scrounge. Spring hasn't arrived, not by a long shot. But you've survived something ancient, something vast, something that tried to erase you. And now, you are present. You are needed. You're no longer just surviving. You're living. You fall asleep that night with a full belly and a sore back, surrounded by people who know what it means to depend on each other. You dream, not of summer, not of warmth, not of escape, but of small things. A table full of food, a sunbeam on the floor, the sound of boots on snow as someone else knocks on a door. Not to ask for help, but to offer it. So now you're here, at the far edge of it all. The blizzard has come and gone, and the storm in your bones has started to quiet too. The house feels bigger again. Not because the snow has melted away, but because fear doesn't fill every corner anymore. There's room now. Room for breath, for movement, for sound that doesn't echo back with dread. You're not standing in the doorway clutching a kettle and praying for daylight anymore. You're stepping outside, shovel in hand, waving to the neighbours. There's still snow, sure, plenty of it. But now it's something to work through, not hide from. And the sky stayed clear, soft blue all day like a promise. Inside, the baby is crawling again, dragging a sock like a prize. Your wife is boiling water for tea made from dried berries someone dropped off yesterday. Alfred's whittling something on the porch. No one asked him to, but he looks peaceful, focused. You haven't heard him cough in a while. The fire isn't roaring anymore, it doesn't need to. It hums. The house breathes with it. You sit by the window, one hand resting on the sill where frost no longer clings. Sunlight spills in like warm syrup, and you tilt your face toward it without thinking. It's not strong. It won't melt the snow alone, but it's enough. And you're enough too. That might be the strangest part. The realization that in the worst of it, you were never not enough. You didn't always feel brave. You didn't always get it right. But you showed up. You kept the fire going. You kept your family breathing. You made it through the kind of cold that doesn't just freeze skin but freezes time. You made it through the kind of silence that feels like a test. You didn't beat the storm, but you outlasted it. And that counts for something. Maybe everything. So now you sit in a room that once held your fear and your hope and your worst nights and your best efforts. And for the first time in what feels like a lifetime, you let yourself rest. Not collapse. Not crash. Just rest. Deeply. Fully. The way only someone who's carried a family through a blizzard can. You close your eyes, and the quiet isn't empty anymore. It's peace.